Oh, goodness sakes. Man, the timing of IBS is always brutal. Even worse when it happens right before the stream. So, that's why I had to leave the message that I was going to be slightly late. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Had a fantastic evening and a fantastic night's rest. Have an update on that. So, second day of forcing myself to stay up no matter what. And we got 5.5 hours this time. So, we're getting there. We're getting there. It's not perfect, but it's much closer and more tolerable. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to watch or what we're going to do, honestly. I don't know, I'm kind of just enjoying not having the headphones on. Just kind of nice not having to have the headset. Oh, because my sleep schedule got split. Like, I used to take like a little power nap after the streams, but then it started like devolving into being when I would actually sleep, and that wasn't good. And you can tell that's why I've been doing the shorter streams. Still 3 hours, but that's why I've been doing the shorter streams lately, because I've been trying to get it back to normal. But man, oh man, I have awful bouts of extreme tiredness where I'll just start head rocking, just, oh yay. It's awful. But we're getting back to actually being able to sleep at night when I want to sleep, and not be asleep during the day when I want to be awake and doing things. Yep, I mean that's what we've been trying to do. That's why last week I didn't even have a Friday stream. I said I'm taking Friday off so I could try to sleep properly. Because I'm a Euro poor, also hate chat and such. What? That's fucking random. And welcome, Crazy Valentine. Welcome. Yeah, one of the things that we're doing, and the reason I had to come up into my mind yesterday when we were doing Once Human was maybe thinking about designing a star fort in Once Human, was because in the book I had gotten to where earlier I had talked about there being a fortress, well, that they needed to make a fortress, I should say, pardon me, so that they could protect the capital city. And I wanted it to be a star fort because Meraxus would have, obviously, he would have knowledge from our world, right? So he designs it as a star fort, but not just any star fort. He makes a ridiculous star fort. So I figured we'd talk about that a bit, and I'd showcase what the star fort's going to look like. I'm just going to rough it in, basically, so you guys can get a rough idea of what it would be. It's going to be kind of tricky to draw, but we're gonna do it as best we can in paint.net. Also talk about, I started watching Freerun. I really do enjoy the concept of it already, of what it actually means to be ageless or to actually be immortal, because there's a concept I deal with in the writings a lot, especially immortality, that immortality isn't all it's cracked up to be. No, you can build in angles and triangles and stuff, and the triangles actually line up. They actually properly line up with each other, so you can actually build the damn things, which is really nice. By the way, have you ever figured out what video got your live stream from the other Friday taken down? Yeah, it was the primitive technology video, but it wasn't primitive technology that did it. It was some other random thing that eventually flagged it. I'm like, that's not primitive technology. It was very, very fucking weird. Well, Crazy Valentine, you know you said it's not working for you, but if you can hear this, they've got. That's why I've got Twitch, Rumble, and Kicks links there as well. So if you want to go to one of those, you can absolutely. Yeah, and it wasn't that it got it taken down. It was that they paused the stream, as YouTube put it, we paused the stream until there are no longer copyright violations going on. I was like, what? It's like, alright, fuck it, I'll just end the stream on YouTube side and we'll just keep going on Rumble and Twitch and Kick. Again, that's why I do this. That's why we go to the multiple platforms. In case one platform does something stupid or goes down, we have it on the other platforms. Oh my goodness sakes. Yeah, so anyways, I started watching Freerun, and I really like already at the start that it's dealing with the concepts of agelessness and immortality. Because I don't view being able to live forever as being immortal. I call it agelessness. If you live forever, but if somebody cuts your head off, you'll die. Or if you get sick, you'll die, sort of things. That's not immortality. Immortality is a specific thing. Immortality is literally the inability to die, regardless of if you might want to. It is a concept one character in particular has to deal with quite a lot. Because as far as he knows, he and the Supreme Being are the only two beings in the entire universe and multiverses that actually have immortality. And it's big, it sucks because the word trigger has gotten bastardized so much, right? But it's basically what would happen if you wanted to incur the divine wrath of a higher being. To do so for one being is basically to the Supreme Being, for example, for Severus, is if you ask him for all knowledge. Don't ask him for all knowledge. The quickest way to piss him off. And then to suffer a divine wrath upon yourself. For this character, it's immortality. People that want to have immortality. Or if they talk about it nonchalantly, or they seek it. Really, really pisses him off incredibly quickly. Like, to the point where it's almost like flipping a switch. He can be fine and calm and talking to you like normal, and then the moment you start mentioning immortality and thinking about like, man, I wish I had it, it's instantaneous that he becomes incredibly hostile, aggressive, and he goes through basically to explain like why immortality makes him so angry so much, because he actually has it, and it's not all it's cracked up to be. In fact, it's incredibly awful. And it's because of your inability to perish. You will come back. You will keep going. You want all knowledge? Say goodbye to your frontal lobe. LOL. I mean, that's if you're lucky, right? That's if Severus is feeling incredibly kind. Most of it, he will pick a particular area, and he will force all that knowledge of that area into you incredibly quickly. Rapid fire, one after the other, and it's usually stuff that's really awful, things you don't want to actually know. And it's just a bombardment forever where you can't think of anything but this, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. Until, well, eventually either you kill yourself, or you become like a mindless, gibbering mess. And then he just leaves you there. Leaves you there to be at the tender mercies of whatever world you're in. But for one, I guess I'll just say what it is. It's Cortisoth. Cortisoth has experienced what immortality actually is. And so he brings up an example where a kind of snobby guy wanted immortality, and he petitioned to the dragon god of creation, of creators is more accurate, but a lot of them just conflate it with creation. He's actually a blacksmith. He likes to create, tinker, build objects, things. That's kind of Cortisoth's field. That's his area. But a lot of people just call him the dragon god of creation, even though that technically should go for Severus instead. But yeah, so he petitioned him, and he wanted it. And again, Cortisoth goes from pleasant to talk with and trying to explain things to immediate hair trigger to being angry, and he wants to teach him a lesson. So he ties his life force, the snobby guy's life force, to himself. So as long as Cortisoth stays alive, this guy will live. And the guy is like sweet, you know, he thinks he got himself a pretty good deal here. He gets to be immortal. Oh, it's going to be amazing. And then Cortisoth starts manipulating things to put him in harm's way over and over and over again in horrific situations. And one of the first ones that happens, which kind of starts him realizing that maybe this was very much not a good idea, was he gets in a bit of an argument with a kind of standoffish, like, brutish noble. You know, the guys, they're very arrogant. They very much want to slap people around. Very much the I'm the boss in the room, right? At all times. So he gets in an argument with him, and he gets in a fight. And the nobleman lops his head off. And, you know, he was thinking, oh, well, you know, I'm immortal. Isn't this going to happen? His head rolls off the side of the road, goes down into a ravine, and comes to a stop next to a giant insect nest. Now, it's not the insects are giant. No, no, no. They're normal insects. But it's a massive nest. And he's aware this entire time and can still feel everything this entire time. So you can imagine already he's starting to realize this might be a bad thing. And his body starts regenerating from his head. So, not his body. Now, his head doesn't regenerate on his body. No, no, no. His body starts coming back out of his head. But he's already been, like, taken into the nest, and he's already got insects crawling under his skin and everything. He's not having a good time. And once he finally breaks free of the nest, like, obviously he's in lots of pain and agony, and he's clawing at his face and everything. He's digging around in his face to get all the insects out from underneath it, but now he's made himself all bloody, and he gets attacked by a pack of wolves. And so you can see how already, like, it should be blatantly obvious that what Cortisoth's doing, what he's punishing him with. But Cortisoth gets even more angry because he actually manages to, even though he gets bit up to hell, and he gets scratched up and mauled and everything, he manages to escape and get to a town for safety before he can be eaten, which Cortisoth specifically wanted him to be, because that's probably the most horrific fate you can suffer when you have immortality. Being completely aware the entire time you're going through something's digestive system. Ugh. Just ugh. So you can imagine why Cortisoth might have a bit of a hair trigger with this. he might understand why this is quite a traumatic thing for him, and why he is very, very angry whenever anybody talks longingly about wanting to be immortal. No, that would be a lot more pleasant, honestly. Like, holy shit. Being tortured for God knows how long, or you get the death penalty and they're trying to kill you, and or they just put you in a coffin and drop you in the ocean. Yeah, at least there, you could get out eventually. Like, here, going through the stomach acids and everything like that, just, ugh. Nope. 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 And Cortisoth experienced it once. That's his, that's the most horrific part, and why he's one of the many reasons why he absolutely despises immortality. The other one is the more obvious one, right? Where he can't, like, he feels like he can't have a connection with anybody anymore, right? Nope. That still happens. Again, it's immortality. It's not like, oh, here's a rule, or if you break them down to the atoms. No, the atoms themselves will start putting themselves back together, and you regenerate it. In fact, the guy that made it away from the wolves, because he starts regenerating in front of the people, the townspeople think he's a monster. So they corral around him, they get him chained up, and they put him on the fucking stake and they burn him at the stake. And he, again, doesn't get to pass out from the monoxide poisoning, doesn't get to die from the pain or anything like that, or no. He gets to experience the entire sensation of burning to death, and then crawls out from the ashes in the morning and runs away from the town as fast as he can, and is basically a gibbering mess. It's like he's just like talking to himself, and he can't think properly, and he's climbs up on a big rock and he starts begging Cordyceps to take away immortality. He wants to be mortal again. He just keeps begging him over and over and over again. Cordyceps, meanwhile, is still pissed. And he does not want to take it away from him. He wants him to experience every aspect of it. Then finally he relents. He severs the connection between their life forces. The guy thanks him, and then immediately takes a head-first dive off the rock to kill himself. Again, basic thing is, as you said, be careful what you wish for. And be careful what hubris will rot. And yeah, he just woofed. Oh, one of the things Cordyceps experienced was there was a coup attempt in a nation that he actually cared about. And he was an advisor for this nation. And the coup attempt, like, it wasn't a coup attempt like people trying to take over the nation. It was the leader of the nation no longer wanted him to be an advisor of the nation, which he was literally an advisor for time immemorial, like from the very inception of this nation. He was always supposed to be the advisor. And so the king had him bound and literally sealed into the castle walls, like cemented into the walls itself. That was a moment. Thankfully, it didn't last long, because the moment that Cordyceps was able to get enough free, due to horrific mechanics that happen when you start decaying inside of a wall. When he was able to get his hands enough free, he was able to cast a spell to get himself out of the wall. And then, he went up to that king, he grabbed him by the throat, and he defenestrated him off through the top tower's window. He was like, no. Let's see. Put them down with the bars, then fill the coffin with molten lead. Yep. We have a side character I had in mind in my fantasy verse. The undying are a thing. It can simply happen randomly that you have no natural death. Some better than others. The idea there's a club for a worker group that helped build a massive project in the past that started 200 years ago. There are actually undead or undying characters as well in my books, but it's not the same as immortality. Theirs is kind of like a reset. It more functions like you would imagine it in Dark Souls or Elden Ring, stuff like that, right? Where they are anchored, their soul is anchored to a particular spot, and when they're killed, they will come back at that spot their soul is anchored to. But if you can destroy the soul, they're dead. They're gone. But it was a curse that was particularly used. Well, I should say in one universe it was a curse that was used. In another universe it was accidentally self-inflicted. But it was a curse used to try to stop an invasion of a kingdom to the north. They had their mages cast this on a couple of the cities that the invaders were occupying. Turned out it was not a good idea. It was not a good idea. Because the other aspect of this thing is not only is your soul anchored there, but reality in of itself seems to have it out for you at all times. Seems to be trying to get you, trying to attack you, trying to target you at all times. So a lot of these people devolve into paranoia. And of course you can remember what kills you each time you die. You remember what did it. And you remember how you felt too. So, hooray, that gets to be that gives you a fun experience you get to the whole time. Yeah, so anyways, like I said, that's why it's a big tangent we've gone on. That's why I really like Free Ren, at least the start of it so far. I don't know if I'm going to continue liking Free Ren. It's really high quality thus far, but I love the concept that her idea of, like, I've only been traveling with you guys for 10 years, for a mere 10 years. I don't know any of you. Like, you're casual acquaintances to me at best. Even though they've literally spent every single day for 10 years together. And I love that as a concept. Because she's like, as far as I know thus far in this universe, elves are ageless. It seems to be. Possibly immortal, given the number of times apparently she keeps getting eaten by mimics. But I don't know how mimics work in Free Ren's universe, other than the fact that Free Ren will inevitably be stuck in the mimics, squirming, trying to get out and screaming for help. But from what it seems, at least I can say that Free Ren seems to be ageless. Like, cause she'll say, like, things of this meteor shower, it looks so much better outside the city walls. And it's like, they're like, well, you know, don't spoil the moment. This comes around once every 50 years. And she just casually says, well, alright, next time this comes around, I'll take you guys to a spot that looks much better. Luckily for her, all of her companions were still alive 50 years from then, but obviously they're now been wizened with age. Like, their main fighter, he looks like a little old man, he's bald, with a big beard, and he needs to walk with a cane, and he's pretty slow now. But he actually gets to experience the meteor shower out in the wild where she wants him to see it. And man, oh man, I will say, Free Ren, the anime, certainly knows how to start you as a fucking tearjerker. Holy shit. Again, just dealing with the concepts of having such a long life compared to everybody else. And how she never really made connections to people. She knew human lives were short, but she didn't realize, like, they were basically like a gust of wind and they were gone. Like, oh my god. Phew. Jesus. It's pretty morbid. Okay, let's see. Part of the workers were humanoid dragons. They have a long lifespan, not thousands of years, close to 250 to 300 years. Quite a few are still alive and enjoy that club. The one member there is another species, and when asked, he reveals he's an undying who also worked on that project. So he's a legit member of that club. Says he feels more at home there since none of his people he knew from back then are still alive, but he knows some of the workers there still. Yep. That's actually going to be a concept that a lot of characters in all of my books, when it comes to long-lived characters, stuff like dragons in my settings, dragons pretty much universally are ageless in mine. And it takes a particular mindset, so that's why a lot of dragons become more aloof and they don't want to connect to things. It's part of why what seems like it should be obvious in this book that we're working on right now, where it seems like it should be obvious when Meraxus is teaching the other dragons like how to interact with their Drakine. Drakine are the kobolds, basically. When he's trying to teach them how to interact with their Drakine and, encourage them and get to know them, and the Drakine will become that much more powerful. They'll become more independent. They'll start building cities and palaces for the dragons. They'll actually start becoming more advanced. And it'll all be thanks to just that small connection to them. But he then has to contend with the fact of dealing with loss, because he gets to know them so much more. And he can't handle the ravages of time as well as other dragons can, because they are so much more aloof. It's just, those 3 kobolds aren't there anymore. Well, whatever. There's 15 new ones. I don't care. In his sense, he knows who those 3 were, and he remembers times with those 3, and so it makes it that much harder for him. So again, that's a concept in this book in particular, especially. But it kind of filters into all characters that are like that. The fortunate thing on Sakara was the Drakine weren't like normal kobolds. The Drakine were more like what you would assume dragon-like lizardmen would be instead. They were taller than people and stuff like that, and they looked very much like dragon. In fact, their culture was the more you looked like a dragon, kind of the more well-off you were. It's kind of like, oh, you've got good genes, You were more handsome, you were more beautiful, so on and so forth. And thus, the Dracoran, which are dragons, Dracoran and Drakine were a lot closer together and could have a lot more interactions with each other in Sakara, which is not something that happens in a lot of other universes. Most universes, the Drakine are your typical kobolds, and they don't live anywhere near long enough for a Dracoran to really form a bond with them, or as the Dracoran would see it. Obviously, Meraxus bucks the trend on that, and he starts getting all the other Dracoran that he is personally in command of, but also of this other world. He starts to get them to start realizing the same thing. Yeah. So I love stories that deal with that kind of concept of things that people think are these amazing gifts, and then you turn it on its head to show why it would be a terrible thing. Logically speaking, you don't have to make up some weird pseudoscience nonsense to be why super strength would be bad, right? No, just take the logical thing of super strength. You can't control it. You're super, super strong, but you can't control the output of it. How would you live your life like that? How would you take care of yourself? Do you injure yourself every single time, you just try to do something as simple as wiping after you go into the bathroom? Washing your hands, do you break your fingers? Again, you don't need to go crazy with it and be because you have super strength, it actually has the inverse effect because of the quantum physics. No. Just think of it logically. Why would this be bad? Super speed. Again, you'd get wind burns all the time. You'd damage your eyes. You'd have all kinds of nerve damages and everything. Super speed would be terrible on a person's body. Holy shit. Would you be able to have conversations with people at super speed? If you were super speedy, do you also have the reflexes of being that fast so you can actually, like, use that speed? If so, how does every conversation in the real world feel to you? Do you need to listen to everything at 10 times speed just to have it be normal? Or does everything sound like this to you at all times? You know how horrible that would be? Genuinely be terrible. And that would be like a person, that was just a person trying to talk fast to you. Superman said in one of the cartoon incarnations, I feel like I'm in a world made of cardboard. Yeah, that'd be a way to do it. That's why you hate the start of the Invincible show, to be fair? Yeah. That's fair. Oh. Granted, I don't like the Invincible show because they fuck over, didn't it? Wasn't it Amber? Oh, fuck, what was her name? The girlfriend. Because in the comics, well, in the graphic novel, I think is more accurate. She was actually genuinely like a person that was concerned with people. Like, holy shit. Amber Bennett, yeah. Like, she was actually a good person in the graphic novel. That was kind of the point. She was a good person. In the show, she's an awful, manipulative piece of shit. She definitely lives up to the Amber name, for sure. She's fucking channeling Amber Heard energy. Oh, God. Hey, Shadow Yanni. Welcome, welcome. New VPN, who dis? Let me make sure Twitch isn't doing the thing. There we go. Throw nuts there. Yeah, she was genuinely likable in the comics. She thought he was a drug dealer in the comics. Oh, we're talking about watching. I started watching Free Ren, and I was explaining, like, it has the same sort of concepts I really like about it. I really like in story. In my books, I deal with a lot of, like, what does it mean to have agelessness? What does it mean to have immortality? And how awful that would be. Race bends white girl. Makes her an asshole. What did Amazon mean by this? I know, right? I know. They turned Amber from being an actual, like, good person and just, you know, worried girlfriend into an actual entitled, up her own ass bitch. And it's wild. Wild. But not just that. Only after they also race swapped her to be black. Which, I mean, based. But, yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree, Amazon, with you. But also, I don't think that's the intended message you wanted to give out. If it was, I will again, double down and say based. But yeah, so we were talking about, let's see, we talked about the immortality stuff, and everything. Basically, divine triggers. What could, cause you to summon divine wrath upon yourself very quickly with different, higher beings. Meraxis is, his divine trigger is generally related to, like, not being dragon-like. And I know that sounds weird, but his whole thing is when he sees people emulating, or even other Dracoran, like, not living up to what they should be, it makes him very angry very quickly. So that's basically gets what his whole thing is like, when you start declaring something to be like a Dracoran, and then you don't act the way you should, very much makes him angry very quickly, and brings out his wrathful side. Well, I actually shouldn't say it's not his wrathful side, because usually he's still in control when he goes into wrath. The problem is when his rage starts taking hold of him. Because he always puts it as wrath and anger are incredibly useful. They're great motivators. They're great capabilities to spur you into action. Rage is the destruction of rational thought. When you go into rage, you're no longer thinking ahead. You're living literally in the second that you are experiencing that moment. And it's incredibly self-destructive. And you will do things because of rage that will be harmful to you without even thinking it. You have no rational thought or capability to think beyond that moment you're in. That's why he always says rage needs to be resisted against. There's a couple times where he's going to have trouble with that. But the first one is when he sees one of the Dracoran, one of the ones that he has most bonded with, gets killed. And then he's just like... it's over. He's trying real hard and he just slips right in. Anyways, yeah. So I really do like that. Also, for Sir Reginald the Seconder, Turd. There you go. Sir Reginald the Turd. I assume that's intentional. Immortality is awful? Sure is, though some are more shit than others. Yeah, again, we were talking about with Cortisov, his is that he is constantly aware at all times, regardless of what state his being is in while it's regenerating back to normal. And he gets to feel it all, too. And he gets to go through what regenerating also means. Muscle spasms, feel like you're having a stroke, everything. So he's very much not appreciative of having immortality. And he really, really wishes that he didn't have immortality. He's very much on the side of, Team Mortals got it good. Agelessness is fine, because then again, if you get hurt or you cripple yourself or something like that, like, you're actually able to die. It's the incapability of death that really makes him hate immortality. Let's see. Would you consider abstract conceptual beings to be immortal? You could kill them, but they still live as long as the concept they embody exists, like Darkseid or Unicron. Not particularly, because, again, they're not really living then at that point, right? They're the manifestation, the anthropomorphization is more accurate, of a concept. It's like death in Terry Pratchett's Discworld books. He's not really alive. He doesn't have the concept of life. It's why he becomes even more fascinated with human beings. And actually why he becomes kind of like on the side of humans in the end. But he himself is not alive. And he never can be alive. He never will be alive. Let's see. As Reginald said, I have once thought of what I would consider the most shit immortality. I believe it be unending reincarnation, never being able to truly die. Yeah, this one is the unending regeneration. Like I said, Cortisov got to experience it when he got eaten. And he got to be aware the entire time he was going through the digestive system of another being. He had already knew immortality sucked, but in that moment is when he truly had his breaking point of hey, I can be careful, I can avoid it, but when he got attacked by another creature and he got eaten, just oof. Oh yeah, the flower pot in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Oh no, not again. There's a species story where an O5 is brought back from the dead and then revealed that there is no true death. You keep existing even as a corpse or subatomic particles, though it is debatable that this that was a side effect of the way he was brought back to life through a machine that can essentially invert causality and reassemble him. Ugh. Yep. And again, that's like I said, that's the fastest way. If you want to make Cordyceps unreasonably angry with you and suffer his divine wrath, start talking good about immortality and things like that. Meraxus makes the mistake of talking about how immortality is could be useful, and just saying the could be useful immediately. Korsakoff went from calm, well, not really calm. Technically, in the situation he was in, Korsakoff was basically browbeating the shit out of Meraxus for being, like, what is wrong with you? Like, what the fuck are you doing? And then Meraxus made the comment that immortality could be useful. And then it was just like, went to a full fucking, we were out of 5 in terms of how angry I am. We're now at a fucking 6,000. I am fucking pissed. My brain upon hearing endless regeneration and mortality. How do I make a farm out of this, man? Well, that was kind of the benefit of it. So, there's a twisted benefit in that the way the immortality works is that the meaty bits don't stick around. So, like, they kind of just turn to ash and mush and everything like that as they get reabsorbed into the world and then get sucked right back in. Just, ooh. So, you can't do, like, a meat farm with him. You wouldn't be able to, like, put Cordyceps in a butcher shop and then just keep him there harvesting off of him forever. No, the cutlets themselves will disapparate. They will just go and then reform onto him. And again, when I say reform, makes it sound really nice. No. Think of it like regrowing things and experiencing all that pains of that in rapid succession. Oh, God. Oh, God. You know what that tangentially reminds me of? It reminds me of Beastars, where there was a guy, he was a carnivore that needed to sell himself because he needed the money for something, and he didn't realize what this butcher shop was going to do because this old goat guy came in and he's like, I've heard that their testicles are very good for energy and, bringing you back to your youth. And so they literally chop him up. They literally chop him off. Like, oh my God, just ugh. Just absolutely awful. And again, this is one of those things where it's like, the Beastars doesn't deal with that consequence, right? It just shows it as a shocking, horrible thing that's going on, but by the end of it, it's by the way that it ended, it's basically saying, yeah, no, that's all good. And it didn't answer any of the questions or anything. Like, it really feels like Beastars, the writer, got tired of it or wanted to move on, and so just kind of like, and now it's over, sort of thing. It feels incredibly rushed because it doesn't deal with any of the consequences, like the fact that herbivores have been intentionally breeding and manipulating carnivores for their entire existence to make them more docile, to defang them, to like damage them mentally and everything, and it doesn't deal with that at all. That they're literally treating them like slaves, just in a gilded cage. They're like, oh, but carnivores can attack, and they can get hungry. It's like, I don't know. After seeing everything that the herbivores have been doing to them, I feel like it's more self-defense, honestly. I'm much more, by the end of Beastars, I'm much more on the side of total herbivore death. But they don't deal with it. They don't deal with that entire consequence of it, how their society is literally fucked. One of the characters I was thinking to make had a type of immortality that is best described as unable to stay dead. Nice. Oh my god. Is it going to be depressed like Marvin the Robot? He's just always depressed. Oof. Yeah, that's what I mean, Finnaru, is like, it feels like they literally wanted to get it over with, because, like, I've got another idea. I want to get that started. Like, and they just wanted to get it done and out of the way. Right? It's one of those ones where the manga ended so badly, I'm just like, God damn. So none of the rest of that setup was ever paid off. Oh my god. Yeah. So apparently they couldn't stick the landing with Borderlands. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because... So the Borderlands movie released, right? The Borderlands movie released, and let's talk about some of the headlines. Borderlands debuts with 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. I believe now it's up to the lofty heights of 6%. Thank you very much. So, wow, we're really shooting for the moon there. Really just shooting for that moon. 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. Another one, Borderlands is on track to earn $15 million on its domestic box office opening weekend. The film had $110 million to $120 million budget. And again, being Hollywood, double that for the advertising, right? Double that. So, yeah, it's a fucking disaster. But, one of the funniest ones I ever heard, 7% now, there you go. It's still one of the worst reviewed movies of all time, holy shit. But one of the other funny ones I heard was, and I want to get it accurately, so let's go in here. Early reviews call Borderlands unfunny and visually repulsive. Now, to me, that sounds like this is probably the greatest video game adaptation of all time. Because that's what I honestly think of all the Borderlands games. Unfunny and visually repulsive. Rotten Tomatoes. It means 7% of their critics have said the movie's good. Only 7%. Like, woofda! They're shooting for the moon on that one, baby. Excuse me. How in the world did they make it so inaccurate and so much worse in terms of plot, humor, design? Again, I think it's, from the sounds of it, it sounds like it's exactly what Borderlands is. No, I have no idea. I'm just saying what we've got for the headlines here. We have even the critics are just like, no, we can't. Can't. Just brutal. Brutal. Speaking of movies, though, remember, next Friday, so 1 week from now, I've already got the announcement posted in the Discord. 1 week from today, we'll be doing the 5 Film Friday Marathon. And for those marathons, those marathons. Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll do this marathon again. But for this one, we're going to be watching Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, Dragonheart Vengeance, The Gentleman, and Godzilla -1. A nice kind of spread of movies with the thing that connects all the movies is that they're all good. All of these are good movies. And all of them are recent good movies. That's the other kicker. Like, these are movies you would not have expected to be good. Especially, like, the big surprises for me was, like, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, that being good. I mean, it's literally a side character, a side story of a side character, 11 years after his initial side character, side story. Like, holy shit. It's just like, wow. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, the fact that it's good. And then the other one, Dragonheart Vengeance, being actually really, really good. That one was also shocking. Because I picked that up at a Big Lots for $2. $2. I picked that up at a Big Lots. And I was like, okay, guys, Saturday Showtime, we're gonna watch Dragonheart Vengeance. I have no idea how bad it's gonna be. I remember the second Dragonheart movie, like Dragonheart Reborn or something like that. Whatever that was, it was generally not good. But it was like, so this one's probably gonna be a disaster. And then we watched it, and all of us were like, what the fuck? It's actually really good. What? It's a Dragonheart movie, and it's actually really good. That doesn't make any sense. How are you so good? It actually has setups and payoffs. The characters actually have reasonable dialogue. They're not superhumans. Like, what the fuck? What is this? There's an actual logical plot progression to it, and stuff that seems like random, haha, funny, is actually explained away as a purposeful thing later on in the movie, and it makes sense. It's like, damn it, this movie's great. Fuck. I was prepared for Dragonheart Vengeance to be bad, and then it ended up being really, really good. Again, just like I was prepared for Puss in Boots: The Last Wish to be bad. Just as prepared for Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves to be bad, and it's really fucking good. It's like, holy shit. Yeah, the first Puss in Boots movie, it was okay. Like, it's not bad, but I don't think it's that great either. It's very much a, yeah, this feels like a side character story, right? I think that's what I would say about the first Puss in Boots movie. It feels like a side character story. Well, even for the limitations for production, it was shockingly, like, really well done production quality, honestly. For what you would assume was like, huh. Puss in Boots 1 pleasantly killed a couple hours of your time. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, yeah. First movie was okay. It was. Again, Last Wish, if you guys haven't seen Last Wish, it's really, really fucking good. It is absolutely a contender for best movie of that year. Absolutely. And again, that's the one thing I wanted to put with all of these. All 5 of the movies this coming Friday are really, really good movies. Shockingly so. They're really good movies. So we'll be doing that. Oh yeah, Such, have you seen the news about the Like a Dragon show? The actors were not allowed to play the games to familiarize with its characters. Yes, I've seen that. And the production staff themselves said that they wanted to do their own thing with it. Congratulations. Fucking Like a Dragon's gonna be shit. Great. Just great. It's gonna be a disaster. Yeah. So we've got those movies set up and ready to go. Yep. Alright, hang on. Well, while we're talking here, I'm also going to start work on the thing. I'm going to try my best. I'm trying to do a fucking star fort, especially the one I'm specifically going to do here. I'm gonna fuck myself right off the very fuck myself off the very bad. God damn it. Again, I'm doing this on the side. I mean, I guess you can watch my foibles if you want. Here. Well, you guys watch my foibles as I try to make a star fort, because I'm going to explain this fortress. This is the fortress that's going to be protecting Dragon's Reach, which is the capital city. So this has actually been strategically placed. So here to imagine. Let's go here. Go circles. The circles are going to represent like mountains, right? So we got a little mountain here. Why? No, I don't want to rotate it or anything. What would rotating a circle do? Okay, a little bit bigger mountain. Fuck it. Why? Why does the rotate circle button exist? I do know why it exists, but yeah. I guess I could use the star tool, but I feel like that would be cheaping out. How would I do the star tool on the other thing? Yeah, so basically it was like this. Like in Lost Frontiers, there's a small little mountain range, right? And then you have, come here. We'll do this. Gonna imagine down. Up, it curves back in. Comes back out and follows along the range, basically. Yeah, then you had here. Oh, you know what? This might actually work. The polygon thing might work. Okay, so here we're gonna put this as red. That is the town of Lakeshore, an actual medieval town of Lakeshore, so it's pretty big. But this town here is located on the shore of the sea. Now, you might be asking, why do they call it Lakeshore? Well, because originally, when their entire country existed in the planet of Veridon, it was a lake. It was just a big lake. So the town just called itself Lakeshore, because they were literally on the shore of a massive lake. Now, when their entire their country got transplanted into a different world, now they're on the shore of the sea, on the shore of the ocean. They're like, what the fuck? But they decided to keep the name because it has history to it now, and plus it being odd actually kind of fits in with it. Isn't the sea like a really big lake? No. Don't, we're not going with that pedantic stuff. No. Bad. Anyways. So that's where Lakeshore is. Meanwhile, if they had one. We'll do a club here. No, damn it. I forgot. You gotta deselect it first. Deselect it, or it's going to keep doing that stuff. I can't deselect. There. Alright. That's just gonna keep changing that. Alright, club. Let's make it green. In this mountain, right here. Let's move it inside. And that mountain is where Dragon's Reach is located. So, obviously, you can't attack the capital by coming in from the sea or anything like that. You have to go around the mountain range to get there. So, because they know the people to attack the capital city, which is inside the mountain itself, you have to go around the mountain range. You have to then deal with this. I'm just gonna put a star here just to point where it is. So we'll do dark gray for that. They have the fortress that's right here. that's protecting the pass leading into the mountain itself. So you have to deal with the fortress if you want to get there. Now, said fortress, let's take this and... can I invert that and just fix it? Oh, deselect. Clean it up! Clean it up! Clean it up! Okay. So, this fortress, I'm going to use the things just as a cop-out, right? Just because it's going to be a bit rough. 3. Okay. We're going to go 5-pointed star. Make the center one here. So you can imagine a 5-pointed star in the center as the star fort, right? This is the start of it. Now, around this star fort, switch to you, switch to you. And the star fort, we've got a moat. Okay, that's the first part of it. But this isn't just a normal thing, right? This reminds me of something. Can you actually draw these in RPG Maker? Pretty sure you can, yeah. But this star fort in particular, and the reason why I got excited looking at one of these, is because of this. Oh, it's only 7. Shit. If it was 8, it'd be perfect. But it's 7. Alright, it's close enough. Good enough for government work, as we say. Alright. Okay. So, you have the 5-pointed star fort inside the walls. There's then a moat around it. Then around that is another landmass, which is the 8-pointed. This is 7, but there's an 8-pointed star fort that is around the central star fort. And then... And by the way, there's no internal wall to the 8-pointed one, right? Wouldn't having less angles make it more easy to defend? Incorrect. No, it actually makes it harder to defend. The reason why you want star forts and why star forts are so much better is because of your angles. There is no way to approach a star fort without having an entire wall section being able to defend itself. Right? Even more so when you get Revelins? Is it Revelins or Revelines? How do you say it? Hold on. Fortress Revelin? It's R-A-V-E-L-A-I-N. Is it Revelin or Revelin? Or Reveline? Anyways, doesn't matter. So, let's do this. And we need you. Okay, we can just, again, we can just move them, thankfully, and then I'll rotate it. Okay. And then one here. And one here. Again, this is supposed to be an 8-pointed star for here. One here. So those are Ravelines as well. And in between all of that, you have additional water. Also, I will need to make these ravelines more accurate to what they are. So give me a second here. I need to come in here. Do like 20. Shave off. Oh. Okay. Fuck me. Alright. Whole point by ravelines is that they do not have defenses towards the Star Fort itself. Okay? Yes, Dragon's Reach has been a typical name I have always used as the capital city for Dragon Empires. Always. That's the way I've always done it. So, yeah. Again, this is really rough. But essentially, you have your central Star Fort. This is where the administration buildings are and everything like that. This is where they're going to have all the supplies. This is where they're going to store like all the food stuff and everything like that. They have a couple set up places for gardening and things like that. It's not really farming. It's more gardening like. So they have greenhouses and things like that in there. And then it goes out into the 8-pointed, this is 7, but imagine 8-pointed Star Fort that's around it. You have to go over the water to get there. No, it's not a bailey. Does not count as a bailey. Again, this in and of itself is a contained Star Fort. The central thing is a Star Fort in and of itself. But this one had to be a fortress that was going to protect the capital city. So they went extreme on building this fortress. So they built the original Star Fort, then they built the moat around it, and then they started building up another Star Fort to completely encompass the first one. And again, there's no defensive barrier from, if you're standing here, if you are an enemy army, and you somehow take one of the ravelines, you're going to be getting shot at from the Star Fort anyways. And when I say shot at, it's going to be crossbowmen, ballista, and mages are going to be firing from it, right? If you manage to then get into the 8-pointed Star Fort, you now have to deal with the 5-pointed Star Fort. Again, they have not lost any defensive capabilities. They just fall back into the 8-pointed Star Fort. It's just absurd. It does not. The reason it does not is because the Kingdom of Drakor has access to magecraft. Really good magecraft. One of these schools of magic, well, you have 2 of them that are going to particularly come of help here. One of them is ground magics. Ground magics, obviously, is the manipulation of soils, earths, materials within it, right? Then, having in some kind of MS Paint challenge, no, I'm explaining what the fortress looks like. Then you have, beyond that, oh, you know what would have been really useful for this? I could have done a layer underneath and put the Star Fort on top of it as a transparency. I didn't think about that. And then I could have done then we could have literally just, sprayed in with the blue instead of doing like vagaries shit. Oh, that's fine. Actually, speaking of vagaries, you got to remember the other aspect. All of this is in its own, like, artificial lake. So, all of that is inside of an artificial lake. Now, the one access point that they have to this fortress is right over here. Oh, we'll keep it as 20. I'm going to make it green so it stands out. Keep it as 20 and just do a line. So, you have access point. From here, it goes to here. And then from here, that goes to here. And this is towards the capital city. And then, actually, to make sure that you can't just go in a straight line to the center, the central access point is to here. It's on the exact opposite end. Let's see, what developed around these subforts? Let's see. city would develop around a central point. This is not a city. This is a fortress. That's specifically what this is. It is not a place where you are going to like live and work traditionally. This is where military is going to hold. It's an actual fortress. Let's see. What about acid? We need to know if you will allow that before we do an isekai to your story. Oh, hold on. I'm gonna... Acid what? Okay, anyways. Oh, yeah, and then I mentioned... so you have ground mages that do that, but you also have construct magic. Construct magic allows for the creation of stuff like golems. So golems and ground magic are going to be doing all of your stuff. They're going to be doing the heavy work for like making all these stuff like that. You can get the water mages in to build the man-made lakes and moats as well. But there as well, they kind of are going to take the moisture from the air to then do that, unless you allow them to transport lots of water, and then they can start doing it that way. But man, oh man, yeah, it's a bit rough. But no, this is just water. Again, it's just here to thwart siege craft works. The Kingdom of Jakor is the one that has dragons, right? Remember, in this setting, dragons are reviled by the gods. And they are being directly attacked and targeted. Which is also why Cordysoth made sure that the Kingdom of Jakor, which was known as Starlight before it came to this world, he wanted to make sure that they would actually be able to defend themselves. Because it's all well and good for him to set in his own plans in motion to try to topple the gods and like replace the order, essentially. At least that's what Meraxus believes is his intention. If he sends like, hey Meraxus, you're going to go to this world and you're going to overthrow the gods, and he only sends Meraxus himself, and he's just looking around like, what? It's me against all the gods? Really? No, Cordysoth actually planned for this, and he waited for Starlight to get as powerful as it was and be as established as it was. Then he ripped the entire country, basically, and he slapped it here into this country. Now, it's not a perfect clean fit. There was actually a lot of stuff they had to explore through to make sure that they still had a lot of their facilities and everything, especially under the ground. But, yeah. Nobody loves enslaved farm tools or the magic doom lizards they aspire to. Rude! Alright. But yeah. So this is the big fortress. This fortress is actually going to become known as Fort Ebonscale. Okay, that's kind of a reveal why, because that actually gets brought up in the story of like, why do the gods hate the dragons so much? They didn't for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Why suddenly do they hate them so much? And then as Meraxus puts together, well, it can't be all the gods, because we have a god literally that sent us here to this world. So it can't be all of them. So why do some of them, let's even say the Medusas. So, again, I don't know if I want to spoil why that is. But yeah. There is a reason. And let's just say, part of that is also why the other races are like, well, the gods have their reasons. And then the people that are closer associated with dragons, aka mages, because most mages know that this magic comes from dragons, and they're like, okay, and what would that reason be? Well, they don't need to tell us their reason. That's the problem. We don't know what the reason is. So why do you believe the gods had a good reason? Yeah. It's not a major thing, but, well, I mean, I guess it is, actually, thinking about it, it is pretty major. Yeah, never mind. But yeah, this reminds me of a manga I've been following called Nebula Civilization. Yeah, Safe Llama, you are way behind the book. You're way behind the curve on this one. I have been mentioning Nebula Civilization for a long time. For a long time. And I've been trying to get more people to read the novel itself, especially. The manhwa was great. So it's not actually a manga, it's a manhwa, because it comes from Korea. But it's great, But the novel is so much more because it's allowed to kind of go into the nitty gritty details, right? It can kind of linger to explain things. One of the things that I particularly like, translations as well are pretty rough on the manhwa, right? Yeah. Obviously, I don't have it to scale, but no, the capital city is enormous. Dragon's Reach is huge. But there they also kind of had the excuse that it was a video game, so you could kind of get away from being a little ridiculous. What made Starlight so interesting as a guild was the fact that Meraxis actually started taking things seriously, and it happened because of the royal physician Jadoxus. So he was originally what the whole thing was going to be. Oh, cue the what is this, a fortress for ants gag? Yeah. So originally what it was going to be was he started off Starlight with the typical MMO guild design, which is basically, it's jokingly referred to as the corridor of usefulness, right? So what happens is, you have a corridor, you just make a single corridor, and then you put all of your like repair vendors, your upgrade merchants, your specialist that's gonna deal with revive sickness and things like that, all in one corridor. That's it. That's all there is. There's nothing fancy to it at all. It's the most efficient design for gameplay mechanics, right? Well, Meraxis originally was Starlight when it was small. He kind of started that. But then as it started getting bigger, he started thinking things through. Not to an extreme extent until later. Later on, he goes full bore into it. But he starts thinking about, well, when he has their revive sickness expert, the royal physician Jadaxus, and he looks at him and he's like, you know what? What if, as royal physician, he has a very important role in the kingdom? So I'm going to let him live in the royal apartments as well. He'll have his own apartment within the royal apartment complex. And again, don't think of apartments the way you would think of like modern day apartments, right? The royal apartments, they're basically like the royal apartments of the castle is where all the nobility are going to live, all the literal royals. And then you'll have like the cook will live there, the head chef and everything will live there. That's another thing that people don't realize with medieval cities and things like that. The cooks, the staff, the people that work and to make the food for royalty, they are also nobles, right? They are their own nobility, and they're treated very, very well for obvious fucking reasons. You treat the people cooking the food you eat very, very well. And so, that's why a lot of poisonings didn't happen because of the chefs and everything like that. A lot of poisonings were outside influence trying to get to the food. Because if you were a chef in a medieval kingdom, you were living real good, right? If you were part of the royal chefs, you and your family lived in the royal apartment complex with the king and queen and the princes and everything, you were living the high life. You were treated with fucking respect. Yeah, exactly. And if you were some madman king or queen that decided to start talking shit about your royal chefs, woo, you were not going to last long. The smells don't happen. Okay, so the streets and everything won't happen. You don't have muckrakers and things like that in mine. You have collectors, muck collectors, but it's because they actually have sewer systems and things like that. Again, Meraxis goes full bore crazy, right? I just arrived. Why is Setch drawn a star fort? This is a star fort in particular from the book I'm writing. This is Fort Ebonscale that protects the approach to the capital city. Yeah, and as you see, it is a 5-pointed star fort that is then inside of this is 7 points, but it's because the tool had 7 points. Okay, right? I'm sorry, it didn't have an 8-pointed star. All right, but it's a 5-star a 5-pointed star fort that's inside of an 8-pointed star fort. And then that has Ravelines all around it as well. And then the green are the only access points for the drawbridges. Then you'll have, obviously, if you want to be fair, you then have like little access points that reach out. And these are called man-and-a-halves. And the reason they're called man-and-a-halves is because they can only fit sidewise 1 man and a half of a man beside each other. They're kind of like gangways. They're intentionally designed to be narrow. So yeah. Kind of. They're kind of escape tunnels. They're more like, this is how you will actually man the outside walls. These Ravelines. How are you going to man these Ravelines? You're going to make them swim across the moat to get there? No. You're going to have them go across the man-and-a-halves. Then they'll get to the Ravelines. They'll be in their defense positions. If a Raveline starts to fall, you just have them fall back through the man-and-a-halves. You pull up the man-and-a-halves, and that's it. Now the people, they're like, hey, we took this Raveline. We have a base of operations. They get there. There's no back fortification. There's no wall defense. It's literally sloped down. So that way both of these walls can now hit everything here. It's not a good situation. How would I make them man the... That's not how you spell it. I know it sounds... That's why I was trying to figure out, like, how do you pronounce this? So I'm just gonna write it out real quick. Again, this is gonna be horrible. All right. Actually, we have text right here. Silly me. I'm gonna horribly write it, but we're just gonna do text here. So that's how you spell it. But I know based on spelling, that does not mean anything for how it actually is pronounced. So I was like, do you say that Raveline? Ravelin? Raveline? How do you actually pronounce that, right? We're discussing right now, Radioactive. We're discussing the Star Fortress that's in the book that I'm writing, that acts as the defensive position. Acts as the fortress that is protecting Dragon's Reach. And again, this is what Dragon's Reach has. In comparison, I'm gonna do let's do them in dark gray. Let's pull you up to 15. All right. So in comparison to what you would think of your normal fortresses, right? There you have maybe like one wall here, wall here, wall here, wall here, maybe at a slight angle. So, we'll say that's kind of fitting for a mess up, and then a single like tower on one of the command points to overlook. Right? No, cannons are not common. This is a setting where the Kingdom of Jakor, which is the only one that has star forts, Meraxes is cheating, right? He's using knowledge that he has from his world to come in here. So Meraxes is cheating. And he's like, because he wants to win. And winning means survival. Winning means continuing to exist. So he gonna cheat. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. So he takes it in, and he makes them build star forts. These have ballistas on them. They're going to have crossbowmen. They're going to have siege bows. So siege bows, siege crossbows, as well as ballistas, and mages. So spellslingers. And the Kingdom of Jakor, which is the only kingdom that has this, is the Kingdom of Dragons. They're the only ones that have dragons. And they're the only kingdom that would actually have dragons as allies to begin with. Because in this setting, the gods hate dragons for some reason. And it's only been a recent development. It's too horrific. But what if I showed my enemies the sun? It's funny you say that, actually. Winning means doing anything and everything to live until tomorrow. Exactly. So, Jakor seems overpowered as hell to begin with, and that was kind of by design, because it needed to be. Because it was going to be a single kingdom, basically, against all the gods. Like, his entire country gets transplanted into this other world, and it's like, hey, it's you versus all the gods. And as I already said, jokingly, imagine if it had actually been the typical isekai sort of thing, where he gets sent by himself and he's just looking around like, me against all the gods? Are you kidding me? What? What do you expect me to do? So yeah, his entire kingdom gets, and that's why we were talking about this. This is a pseudo map for how it looks, right? So he has Lakeshore here, which is the name of this town, which is now on the ocean shore. It originally wasn't. Originally it was on the shore of a lake. Now it's on the shore of an ocean. Oh, and hang on a second. Let's put a little thing here. That'll work. Yeah. Way too big. Okay, there we go. It's a really shitty map. Well, I need to make an actual proper map, right? Get an official frowny face for me, isekai fucking really. But you're not using all the brain dead video game and power fantasy tropes, right? Kind of. So the reason why is because the video game in and of itself was actually a test. So it's not an isekai in the traditional sense, right? He's not dead. He doesn't die and get sent to this world. There is a moment of convergence that happens. And he actually asks Cordysoth, like, what's the fucking deal here? Like, what is this? Why am I in this world? Why am I now, I'm not human anymore, right? Why am I here? And he's like, what if I want to go home to my family? Like, what are they going to think? And he explains to them, you are going home to your family. What has happened here is a version of you is now here. A version of you is still there. You have basically split. And now you need to ask yourself, which version of you did you most want to be? The version that's here where you get the chance to live out your dream, or the version of you that's back on Earth that's going to be with your family? Which one do you want? And basically, at first, again, he's still weirded out and everything, but he eventually decides that, no, he's going to be greedy. He wants to be the version here. He wants to be the version that's here that gets the chance to live out his wild dream. Which his wild dream was to be a dragon. Right? To actually properly be one. So that's what he's always wanted. Obviously, that can't happen on Earth. So he goes into the MMO and he just kind of like gets to live it out kind of like vicariously. Pseudo fantasy. Pseudo real, right? Let's see. By them being powerful, the gods should be at least just as powerful or even more. It can be a way to show both of their levels of strength while only actively showing one of them. Kind of. What ends up happening is that spoiler? No, that's fucking too spoilery. Fuck! It's too spoilery. Can't explain that. But basically, the Kingdom of Jakor is the most powerful nation at the moment. But that's only because of what they have. They don't have people. They don't have the population numbers to compete with other nations. They can't control a shit ton of territory, for example. Not for now. It's going to take them many, many years until that can come about. Many, many years. A few generations, in fact. But for now, they're safe in their small containment. So if you can imagine that, we'll just do this. So if you can imagine that, we're just gonna generically put in like some slopes and curves here, right? Okay. Now, okay. And then then we will have it dissected. So going off this way. Coming off this way. Coming off this way. Okay. So you have here that's Dracor, right? It is surrounded, besides the ocean, right? And again, I don't have this properly lined up or anything, right? This is just basic purposes to explain this. This is Dracor. This is a small little thing. And then going off here, way off, you have 4 other kingdoms that surround it. So, that's Stalis, Agarol, Garridan, Stormwind. Oh, shit! Okay. Technically, there's a 5th kingdom as well, but it's not actually on the border of it. But it's close. It's close enough that it'll actually be a problem. So if we can imagine here, just like a, come in like that. So there's another kingdom here. They don't know what the name of that kingdom is yet, though. Yep. So basically, yeah. There's 6 kingdoms in total on this island. This is think of it like an Australia situation, or like a really big Japan, right? That's basically the island they're on, and then you have other nations that are way off, like, what's it, like, way off in the ocean, way past everything. We're just gonna do, whoop, okay, ocean, right? And you have dozens and dozens of other kingdoms everywhere else, right? So, yeah. As I was about to name the 5 kingdoms just to be a dick. You gotta ruin my fun, yeah. Basically, that's the way to put it. It's like a small continent. That's a good way to put it. So Dracor is this small area of this small continent, right? This is the good news with Dracor is that their equator, right? The equator would basically be just on the southern tip of this continent that's to their north. So they're in a pretty nice, mild, temperate zone. So maybe a bit of snow, but it's not much. The climate doesn't change dramatically between everything. They're very much in a nice kind of spot when it comes to it. The other kingdoms, they stretch off in other directions. This Dracor originally, what was originally the area of Dracor was actually a battlefield for a lot of this, because you had all 4 nations, all 4 of these kingdoms had a border here with each other. So Stormwind, like, hey, I don't need to pass through Garridan or Lagerall. We'll just go straight and go attack and beat the shit out of Stalis. You had, or obviously Stormwind and Lagerall would gang up on Garridan. You'd have Stalis would invade Lagerall. Like, it's just a total mess. This whole area was originally a battlefield, and it had a tree line that kind of carved into this whole area. Big, thick tree line. There was a few mountains here as well, right? Yeah. Basically. That's a good way to put it, Mishima. So they will have snows and things like that, but there'll be very mild winters. They're not going to be like Midwestern winters or Canadian winters, right? They're going to be pretty mild winters. But anyways, so they had this entire area that had trees, stuff like that. Then the thing happened between the gods and the dragons. No one knows for sure, except for, obviously, the people that are directly involved. They don't know exactly what's happening. They just know now the gods want the dragons dead. They want them all gone. Every one of them. 20 years of conflict has gone by with this, and then suddenly a massive wall of fire erupts all around here. Okay? massive wall of fire erupts. And everyone's like, what the fuck's going on, right? Right, and they're just like, what's going on? What's the wall of fire? People originally freak out about it because obviously when the wall of fire starts, all of the creatures and monsters and wildlife that are living here, they start running the fuck away. And so they start invading all the other kingdoms. And now people are like, what's going on? Well, eventually time goes by and it becomes normal, right? There's just a massive wall of fire there for some reason. They don't know why it is. They don't realize that Cordysoth basically stepped in and was like, hang on, we're going to section off this area right here. Because he got permission to do his little experiment. So, yeah. So he sections off that whole area. Nobody else is the wiser. Nobody knows why there's fire there. The gods don't even know why there's fire there. They're like, there's fire there for some reason. I don't fucking know. It exists. And this goes on. A decade passes. 2 decades. 3 decades. Monsters start coming from the fire, attacking all the kingdoms, stuff like that. Just to make sure that nobody gets a little like, well, I'm going to go... Let's make some anti-fire magics, and let's put on some fireproof gear, and let's go explore it, right? You want to make sure nobody gets that in their fucking head. So they'll send out monsters every now and then. Then another decade passes, another. And it's been 80 years since the fires came. And then suddenly, the fire's gone. Just overnight. It just vanishes. And now, in its place... you have Starlight, which then renames itself to the Kingdom of Drakor. The book is named His Majesty the Dragon. That's the name of the book. So now, again, just overnight, snap of fingers, suddenly there's no fire there. People don't get up in arms about it. They've been so used to fire being over there that they don't even look that way anymore in the night sky. Like, oh, there's going to be no star cover over there or anything like that. Just whatever. And then the next day, they don't realize it too. And they're like, something feels off here. Something feels off. Something's not right. Then that night, they're like, I can see stars over there now. What is happening? And all the kingdoms slowly wake up to realize that, wait a minute, the fire's gone. Well, now they're really curious. Well, what was behind the flame walls? Because they can see there's trees there and there's forests there. And by the way, basically all of the border villages and stuff like that, all around the border, they've all been abandoned. Long since abandoned. Because nobody wants to live next to a giant wall of fire. Makes sense. So that's all been abandoned. Well, now all these kingdoms start thinking, well, let's start sending out some stuff that way. We're going to send things that way. And as they start to get curious, Meraxus orders a bunch of the Drakor, and he's like, okay, what you're going to do, guys, now that we've checked to make sure our salt mines exist still, our gold and silver mines exist, we have all of our resources, okay, we're still able to be self-sufficient here in this world now. We're still able to be self-sufficient. But we're surrounded on all sides. So what I'm going to have you do, all you Dracoran, we're just going to have you take turns and shifts. You're just going to do hot laps around Drakor. So they just have the Dracorans. All the Dracoran, by the way, is dragon in dragon language. That's how you say it. Dracoran is dragon. So they have all the Dracorans that are just constantly doing circles, doing laps around the kingdom. And that immediately gives all of them to go, whoa, hold on a second. No. No, that's not the name of the book. The name of the book, like I said, I'll type it here. That's the name of the book. Anyways, so they're all doing hot laps around it, basically, just to keep everybody at bay, right? They just don't want, they're like, no. You're not coming in. You're not coming in. So all these kingdoms originally were going to rush over there. Then they see all these monsters flying in the sky and they think, those look an awful lot like dragons. And It has been 100 years since the conflict with the gods and the dragons started. I'm a bit worried now. Hold on, slow your roll. We're not gonna dive in there yet. Right? So again, it's the initial parts of the book are gonna seem kind of hectic because it's the first few days after the fires die out, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done to keep Drakor safe. Because again, while Drakor is the most powerful nation, they don't have numbers. They're each individually, like one of their mages is way more powerful than any other spellcaster in this world. But it's one of you versus 1,000 of them. I'm sorry, I don't care how powerful you are. One of them's probably going to get a lucky shot in. Do you want to risk it? So essentially, they can't really expand out or do anything. Drakor's kind of stuck there, and it's like, okay, we need to start really digging in. And then again, that's where he starts putting in the establishment of building these star forts. And there's only one star fort in and of itself, one big fortress, and then they have outposts all over, like near the border. And those outposts, well, there's diplomacy, yes, and they're going to get into that. And again, we've discussed before as well how Meraxes is going to take down a slaver nation. And again, why he particularly wants to take down said slaver nation, and it doesn't have anything to do for the obvious ethical and moral reasons, right? Because as Meraxes himself puts it, dragons are the apex beings in this world. If we discount the gods, right? Dragons are the apex. It would make sense that dragons should be able to enslave lesser races. But he's not going to do that. Because once you start slavery, your economy and your people then become interdependent on slavery. And they start losing their capabilities to function without slavery. It's just not practical. In the long terms, it's going to lead to downturn. AKA, look at Africa. Africa still practices slavery to this day. Slavery gives a hidden dagger in the dark over time. Yep. Again, things that you wouldn't expect it to. It just becomes the logical series of events that happens. Once you start relying on slave labor and slave nations, you stop progressing. Because your people are now divorced from their labors. So they're not thinking about how to improve the labors. They're not thinking about how to progress. You're stuck. You're stuck in a mindset, a particular mindset. Oh, hang on a second. I've been standing for a couple hours. I'm gonna sit down for the last hour. That was awful sounding. What was that? Oh. Yeah, anyway, so he talks about how, again, I've already talked about it before on stream, how specifically what he does, and it's the fact that he's going to flood the market with gold and in the slave trading nation, right? Bulgaria is one of the countries here across the sea from them. They don't know where they're at exactly. They just know they're across the sea somewhere, okay? Bulgaria is a slave trading nation. But they haven't gone really full bore into it. What's the best way to put this? They're like, oh, it's just one of our businesses, right? No, make a canal. I'm writing the book. I'm writing it. This is my book. It's not published yet. We're talking about my book. That's why we're here. That's why I've been talking about this whole thing too. Anyways. So you've got Bulgaria that's over here somewhere, right? They don't know where it is yet. He doesn't even know what the nation was. They just happens to be that a slave ship gets damaged in a storm in the sea, and they go to try to make landfall at Stalis. But they end up, they're closer to Drakor, so they land at Lakeshore, right? Now, Meraxus, in and of himself, like I said, he doesn't want to destroy slavery for the moral and ethical reasons. In fact, he points it out to the slave ship captain that he finds it more comical that humans can keep slaves when they're just as weak as the slaves they keep. Whereas dragons would have, by divine right of might, should be the ones that can keep slaves. But he doesn't want to. And he doesn't explain that to this ship captain. He explains it to actually some of the slaves when he buys them. He buys them and he sets them free. But, like I said, that gets into the his reasoning why isn't just for the moral and ethical reasons, but he has pragmatic and actual economical reasons for it to begin with. Exactly. That's part of why he wants to fuck up the slave trade, is because it will actually destabilize all nations associated with it. So he has a way to hurt it. And he just heard from the slave ship that they are selling their slaves to Stormrend. Stormrend is a slaver nation. Right? So, he gets multiple wins out of this. First one is he gets a slave ship that's full of lizardmen. Lizardmen become an ally of Drakor. There is a massive swamp here that makes it difficult to traverse. Acts as a natural land barrier. So he allies with the Saharidan, which is the name of the swamp, and it is a big swamp. And they are lizardmen, and they worship the god Hexathus. Hexathus actually comes to Meraxus and explains that he might have had a hand in the storm that's sending the slave ship their way. Right? And Meraxus comes up with a different solution, because what Hexathus and the lizardmen thought he was going to do was he was going to attack the ship and free the lizardmen. Right? Instead, he buys them, all of them, but he asks, what price were you going to get per head for the lizardmen that you have in your cargo? And they're like, in Stormrend, for a good one, we'll get a silver. We'll get a silver coin per head for a really good slave. And he says, alright, well, I will buy them for a gold coin per head. And this blows the slave captain's mind, the slaver captain's mind. He's just like, what? Because that is ludicrously inflated value price, right? He has a ship hold full of 100 slaves. He's going to get 100 gold pieces, because Meraxus says he doesn't even care what condition they're in. He'll pay a gold per head. Now, the reason he's doing this is multiple reasons, and how he's doing it is multiple reasons. One, Drakor already has their own gold mines and things like that. He has plenty of gold, but he purposely gave them gold discs, right? They're still valuable just because they're gold in and of itself. He has gold discs that have not been imprinted. They are not in circulation in Drakor's economy, because he specifically does not want the economy to collapse and to have all other legal tender, whatever that be, whatever denomination it might be in, to lose its value. He wants the coppers and silvers to still hold the value they have in his nation. So he gives them unprinted gold discs. And he tells them as much. He's like, all right, these are unprinted gold discs. And I will give you a gold disc per head. Now, obviously, if you take that back to your kingdom, they're probably not going to give you a full gold value for it because they're not printed. But even if they give you half of the value for it, you make out like a fucking bandit, right? And so, yeah, the captain obviously agrees to it, and he's going to go back to his kingdom now, really fucking rich. So is all of his crew. They're really fucking rich now. And Meraxus then explains to, after he did this, no, because what they're going to do is, he specifically mentions that take this to your treasury, take this to your royals and explain to them what it is. Because he knows what will happen is the people will take for granted the income of wealth, because getting an extra 100 gold coins into your economy is a big boon at first. The at first is the big asterisk there. What ends up happening, what would end up happening, and this is again what he explains to them, because they're Lisbon are confused, like, why did you buy the slaves? Why didn't you attack the slave ship? Why didn't you just give them all for free? He explains what he wants to do is he wants to destroy their economy. He wants to destroy Bulgaria's economy and anybody that's associated with it. Now, Bulgaria can save itself if they, like, say, we're just going to flip this real quick and say this is Bulgaria. Bulgaria has a bunch of kingdom neighbors, right? So Bulgaria can save itself from the economic ruin that he has now set in motion by sharing their wealth. Like, oh, well, we're just going to quickly buy a bunch of stuff from Stalis, buy a bunch of stuff from Lagerall, buy a bunch of stuff from Garrison, buy a bunch of stuff from Stormrend, right? You can save your economy that way to make sure that they instead take the burden of this new inflation and you don't, right? So long as you don't then, like, in kind take a bunch of stuff from them, if you just keep buying from them real quick to keep your currency at a really high value, you can save yourself from this. However, he's assuming that what will happen is they'll actually, at first, really like the fact that they're going to become even that much more wealthier. Right? They're going to like the fact that they've got all this gold. They're not going to think about, like, getting rid of it as quick as they can. But also what he's done is he has put down a flag that, hey, my kingdom will buy your slaves at a premium. Right? You will get 50 times the value, at least, of your slaves if you sell them to my kingdom. All these other kingdoms, they can't compete with that. Stormrend can't compete with giving a gold coin per head. What currency does Drakor use? It uses the gold dragon, right? But it also goes into other denominations of coppers, silvers, and golds. So, normal people are going to be paid in coppers. Then you're going to get paid in silvers for a higher tier. It's 1,000 coppers for 1 silver. It's 100 silvers for 1 gold. That's basically how the breakdown works. So he keeps things relatively like that. If you get paid for a job in 5 coppers, you're doing really fucking well in Drakor. You're doing really well. If you get paid a silver, whew, you're fucking loaded. Because stuff like, hey, say you want to go get something to eat, right? You'll go get yourself a nice meal. That'll be a single copper. It's pretty good. So he needs to make sure that his economy stays stable. So he makes sure that he gives stuff that's uncirculated. Gemstones and stuff like that just have the value based on what people are willing to pay for them. They're not treated as having intrinsic or inherent value. That's the thing with the coppers, silvers, and golds. They're treated as having intrinsic, inherent value. He actually runs into a problem at first, before he starts this plan, where the economy was actually running out of money. So he was having the inverse, where he was having so much shrinkage instead of hyperinflation or inflation. He was having so much shrinkage that there wasn't enough coins to give to people. So he was like, okay, well, I need to quickly figure out who's hoarding all the coins. Hopefully it's the capital. He's like, hopefully if it turns out it's the palace, that would be the best bet for it. And it ended up being it was the palace. So, yeah. He then went in, and what he started doing is he then started a bunch of projects, like work projects, and he started giving out money that way. Yeah. Yeah, basically, Sir Reginald. So he started doing work projects like bathhouses and things like that. He specifically wanted to do bathhouses. Everybody at first was like, that's weird. Like, even all the villages, you're going to have all the villages in Drakor are also going to get a bathhouse? And he's like, yep, that's what I want. So now you have all this construction that's going on in all these villages. Well, the villagers now, they can sell stuff to the construction workers. The construction workers are being paid by the crown. The construction workers are now spending their coins in local eateries or for food and stuff there. So he's helping to recirculate coinage, but also the bathhouses ended up being kind of like communal areas where people gather together. It improves cleanliness throughout his kingdom, which again he specifically mentions in his mind you, but obviously as a reader you get to read his thoughts at times. He mentions the fact that he knows that in medieval times it was a misnomer that people were dirty and filthy and stuff like that. No, human beings have always like strived for cleanliness, no matter what the area is. Human beings don't like being dirty. They didn't suddenly in the medieval times like smearing shit all over their face and stuff like that. No. The muckrakers and stuff like that had to deal with poop and stuff like that, they too like to be clean. So they would go and bathe themselves because they don't like having dirty poop smells and trying to eat with feces. They don't like that. But this improves their overall health and well-being, and it also brings their communities together. But because Drakor also has a lot of mages, he also sends the mages out, those who want to go for service, because he has a golden opportunity here at this point. Now that their kingdom has shifted to another world, he has a golden opportunity to completely rewrite how their governance is going to work. So essentially, if you're part of the nobility, which there are no nobles now, the nobles were the players, but all the players are gone, he's the only one, so they only have a king and then no other nobles. So nobility will not inherently be given rights to rule. Instead, they have rights to ancestral land, their title, which is their title is a specific term of address, and the ability to have a banner and call banners to themselves for purposes of defense and attack. But they don't have rights to governance. Governance will instead be dictated by service. So this allows the normal peasantry to move up. Again, it's literally federation. Like, think of it as like a pseudo Starship Troopers, right? Service guarantees citizenship. He's giving people the ability to move up from their station if they choose to render service to the nation in and of itself. And then you are given your capabilities to then go from that to then you're allowed to hold public office, to vote, and to teach. So he wants people directly invested in the health of the nation to get that. Now, because this is a new change, and he doesn't want to like remove the elderly from their positions of leadership in their villages, he puts a cutoff. Basically, like, depending on the lifespan of your race will be a cutoff for like, hey, this is a new change that's coming in, but you're literally too old to render service to then get your position properly, so we're just going to grant you citizenship for now. And this is a problem that will literally sort itself, right? Because once the elderly die off in this generation, they're the only generation that needs to go through this. This problem will never come back up again. So once that happens, obviously that problem will sort itself out. And so he creates a new department within the palace that's literally the royal service is what it's called. And you go there and you submit that, hey, I would like to go for service for it, and then they will pick out what you need to do. A lot of people will pick the military because it'll be the shortest pathway, and this will also be how Drakor gets a standing army, which is something that isn't common in this. When you have medieval periods, a lot of people think like, oh, the big armies of England. It's not actually the big army of England. It's more like the crown calls to war. They call the war banners to all of their nobility. The nobility then themselves call the banners for the people that are directly under them, and then they use the household guards and regiments and militia that those people raise to form up underneath the banners. So then you have like the army of Essex, the army of Manchester, and so on and so forth, right? And then collectively they're all underneath the bigger banner of England. Right? You don't have like a traditional standing army, so to speak. Right? Each area has its own independent thing it does. Drakor, on the other hand, is actually going to have a standing army. So it will have an actual military path, and you can go military career with it. But you only need to do 4 years of service. However, if there are mages that want to do service, he is instead going to put them to work in the bathhouses, which will then send the mages out to go around, and they'll be rotating throughout the kingdom. And his reason for doing that is, one, it will allow more peasantry, the small folk, to interact with mages, and potentially find people who actually have the capability to use magic to then be sent to the capital for proper training as a mage. So he's going to find more mages quicker that way. But the mages themselves also get to actually know the people of Drakor. Again, you're going to be a mage, you're going to be really powerful, and we're going to get you a connection, an association with the peoples, the small peoples of the kingdom. So, yeah. It just, oh boy. Yeah, anyways, so, winding back, so what he's going to do is now he's set into motion that these people realize they get 50 times the value for their slaves if they sell to Drakor. So they might try to keep it secret at first, but imagine you're suddenly really wealthy and maybe you want your buddy, you want to help them out. Like, hey man, if you go to Drakor with a slave ship, like, you can get a lot of value for it. So now it starts spreading. Slowly but surely it spreads out. And then people are going to start flooding into the slave trade to get rich. And they're going to start bringing the slaves to Drakor. Meraxus wins because he's going to get more lizardmen. He wants more lizardmen. He's going to buy more lizardmen. He's going to have them say, like, all right, here's your options. You can literally go right back to them for some reason, but that's obviously the wrong choice. But you can either live here in Drakor, you can do whatever you want here, you can go over and live in the Saharidan with all the other lizardmen. It's up to you what you want to do. You are free now. So that also gives them they're kind of indebted to him, and he's also creating very close ties to Saharidan. When he wants to, because he's now in talks with Hexathys, the actual god of reptiles. So he's in talks with Hexathys. Hexathys is like, yeah, no, I want to ally with Drakor. I want to ally with the Dragon King. With their ship missiles and begging techniques. So, now you have, suddenly, Bolvaria just has tons of people that are going into the slave trade to get rich quick. And then they're bringing in more and more and more money. So now you have, instead of one ship doing it, now you have 3 ships. 5 ships, 7 ships are now bringing in just tons of gold. And at this point, and if you're not paying attention, you might start noticing that there are problems going on, right? You might start noticing that there are issues at this point. Because now suddenly you're running into resource shortages, because more and more people are now flooding towards the slave ships and going on to the slave marketing. But you also have a problem where goods and services are starting to charge more, because those goods and services, hey, I'm an innkeeper and I kind of want to get in on all this gold they're bringing in, so I'm going to increase my prices. And the slave ships, they're like, well, we can pay for it, we'll just keep doing it. But then the normal peasantry can't, the small folk can't. So they start to suffer more. And then people start selling their tools for higher prices. Now the small folk can't get it. They start suffering more. And it starts getting more and more and more imbalanced. So to then make it to get the relief they need, the small folk will start flooding in quickly and very rapidly. Where they will collapse into the slave trade as well, so they can make ends meet. They got to pay their taxes. They need to be able to get the foods and stuff to feed their families. Even though some of them are on subsistence, a lot of them, they can't do that. Like the blacksmith can't be on subsistence. So he's going to need something. So he's going to have to jack his prices up. Now his prices are up so high that none of the small folk can interact with him. So, none of the small folk can get any of their stuff repaired unless they can pay for it. Well, if we go into the slavery, we can now pay for it. And now you've totally fucked the economy. All of your people, all of your labor has now jumped and shifted an entire different industry. And now you no longer have resources. You no longer have the capabilities to sustain your nation. The economy has become so fucked and has become so hyperinflated that it collapses it collapses in on itself, not in under itself. And now, because the economy has collapsed in on itself, now you are forced to go to all the other nations to try to save your country. And what do you think all those other nations are going to look at? We don't want your gold. We don't want what's happening to you to happen to us. And we kind of like the fact that one of our rivals is going under. Sorry. Can't help you. But this also means, because again, everybody was going to Jakor to sell their slaves, all the other slave nations, they're not getting any slaves anymore. They can't compete with the price that's being paid. So you're damaging their economies as well, because they can't replenish slave stock. They can't get new slaves. So their economies start hurting. Their economies start suffering. Because their peoples have become divorced from their labor. So now they're in a spiral as well. And then what happens? You have now where your country now needs the slave trade. Needs. And it can only sell them to one other nation. That nation is paying ridiculous amounts of money. Your people are now dependent on that particular amount of money to be paid so that they can continue to eat. Now your economy has gotten that fucked. You need a wheelbarrow full of gold to buy bread, basically, right? We're talking about like the ends of the Soviet Union. Your inflated, your currency has become that inflated and that worthless that quickly. What happens if that nation now starts refusing to buy any slaves whatsoever? Uh-oh. And remember, and the reason, what he's going to do is he's going to wait until those slave ships stop bringing lizardmen and they only start bringing other races. Once he's going to know that he's having a very hurtful impact the moment he realizes that, hey, we have a shipment of lizardmen, and also there's a couple dwarves in here. There's a couple elves. Here, this one, it's a mixed one. We've got some lizardmen, but, this one's elves and dwarves, and there's some humans in here as well. Then he's going to know what's going to happen. He's going to know that they're desperate. They're trying to get as many slave ships together as possible to keep funneling in more currency. They've got runaway inflation. They can't help it. They can't stop it now. They can't divest either, because now all the other nations have seen what's happening. They don't want in on that. They don't want that to happen to them. The new economic treatises disguised as a fantasy adventure. So, once he sees that there are ships now that aren't selling any lizardmen whatsoever, he then will refuse to buy any slaves. And he'll send the ships on their way. It's like, nope, not interested. Those ships cannot sell their cargo to Stormrend. Right? Stormrend can't compete. Stormrend would have to give them the original price, which is now 50 times lower than what the value of the slaves is. Right? Even if you sell all of your cargo there for top dollar, for a silver per head, you go back home and you cannot feed your family. You can't afford it. That trade mission basically blew up in your face. And now your entire economy, the entire economy of Bulgaria, is now in free fall. Civil unrest is happening. Maybe a couple rebellions. But, hey, the Kingdom of Jakor won. And they don't have to risk a single life. A single Dracoran life does not need to be lost. This entire battle was waged with coin. Yee. I like solutions like that. That's why I like writing solutions like that. And again, I also do the flip side of it. Like, again, Bolvaria could have saved itself along the way if their greed hadn't gotten in the way. They could have realized that, hey, with this new money, let's start buying from all of our neighbors and fuck their economies over instead. But they didn't think about it. They were too busy enjoying the newfound wealth they had, which was a great boon to them, until suddenly it wasn't. And it went very quickly. Plagues are less dangerous in this world because healing magics exist. Now, healing magics aren't like all powerful, right? But with healing magics, you can stop pain. You can cause the body to regenerate and things like that. Right? Like, you can regrow skin. You can regrow muscle. You can fix tendons and things like that. But it's also why, like, in a weird sense, science also improves in this world, because the people that do healing, you need to actually know what you're healing in order to funnel your magics effectively. If you're just somebody that knows basic level healing magics, you're soothing a little bit of pain, like maybe helping the regeneration a little bit. I guess you stop the bleeding, but you don't know how to fix anything. You don't know how to properly use your magics to like fix up the veins or regrow muscle tissue and tendons and things like that, because you don't know any of that stuff. So ironically, because to be most effective with the healing magics, you need to understand how the bodies work, a lot of them actually become a lot of the mages that are light mages and nature mages that are focused on healing magics, they become really knowledgeable about biology because of it. It's Saudi Arabia and Russian economic situation if you replace slaves with oil. Yeah, basically. But fun setting of samurai fighting in the fields and court clans, renowned for diplomatic favor trading prowess. Nice. But yeah. So yeah, plagues aren't as much of a problem, and that's just because magic exists. However, you also need to understand those to a basic extent. Yeah. Well, you can learn healing stuff. You can learn healing magics pretty easily. Like, as well, assuming you also have the capability to learn. Because that was the thing, too, that Meraxes starts realizing. He's like, wait a minute. Everybody in Lost Frontiers could learn magics. Everybody could. There was no stipulation that you had to. Is that the way it works here? And then he finds out, no. You have to actually have an innate trait or a capability to do magics. To actually learn magics. So there is actually a genetic component to it as well. Now, obviously, the people of Drakor and the people of this world don't know that. But you know, he realizes, like, oh, okay, so, you know, not everybody's going to be a mage. Got it. Okay. For those that can do magic, though, learning healing magic is incredibly easy, but it's not effective at all unless you understand the intricate biology and you know how to channel and focus your magics. Because there's a lot of focus. A lot of the magic system in my settings will always involve willpower and knowledge. So, int and wisdom, basically, are your things you gotta do. Or int and willpower are the things you need to do. You need to focus on if you want to be a mage in any of the settings I do. And it's why counter magics can be incredibly effective. Because if you can disrupt even a small part of somebody's spell casting, it can have dire consequences for the spellcaster. Yeah. Again, a lot of healing is just lol magic, but that's stuff like, oh, you fell down and scraped your knee, sort of thing. Oh, don't cry, child. Here, I'll cast some healing magic on it, and you hover your hand there, and it feels the warmth, and it kind of slowly stitches things back together and things like that. Just because all you're doing is fixing the skin. right? You're reweaving the skin back together. You're getting rid of the bruises and abrasions. But if somebody had their leg cut off, well, healing magic, you can seal the wound if you only know just healing magic. But if you properly know, like, well, this is bone structure and stuff like that, this is what the veins are, these are the tendons, these are the muscles, like, then you can actually regrow the leg. Granted, it's going to be incredibly painful. And unfortunately, if you're regrowing the thing, you can't really be focusing on pain management as well. So it's very helpful to have other mages nearby who also are very good with healing magic to be like, all right, we'll manage the pain. You do the regrowing. So it's not really like a one-person operation can do all of it. Yeah. It's going to take quite a group effort if you want to do it really effectively. Yep. And it's the same thing with a lot of things too, like constructs, everything. Like, you would think, oh, like construct magic, I'm just going to construct a golem. You actually need to understand how your golem will function, what capabilities it will need, and how it will function. Sure, you can make a being out of metal that moves. You can make living armor, for example, right? But you need to understand then, how do the joints work? How does it function? Because you can make the shape of it, but if you didn't put in any of the joints, if you didn't put any of the twists and turns, it's just going to be standing there forever in an A pose, just looking at you like, the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what's it going to do? You need to understand how it actually functions, how the mechanism works in the golems and in the creatures you create. Same thing with nature magics. You need to understand how and why the things are done the way they are when you grow these. Father, why do I feel pain? Yep. Yeah, that's and again, we talked about it as well, like how the magic system works. It's an 8-pointed star. Again, which is why this was supposed to be 8 points, but again, this obviously doesn't have it. It has 7 points. Close enough, whatever, right? But it's an 8-pointed star. It's the 8 points of magic. Well, magic that they know of. Is there like a rating of mages, as in how proficient are they at utilizing your magic? Yes. But it's not like a hard rating thing. It's just a generalized, we feel like this. And essentially, the best way to do it is, how many schools of magic can you channel at once? So there are the 8 schools of magic that people know about. And of those, you have 4 primaries and then 4 contradictories. Like, you have fire, then its contradictory is water. You have ground, its contradictory is air. You have construct, its contradictory is nature. You have light, its contradictory is dark. And the more powerful spells require multiple different schools. Now, contradictory magics, we'll get into that whole thing as well. I've explained this before, but this might as well just be a day where we explain the systems, right? So, the magics are, an archmage would be 8 at the same time? No, then you'd be a dragon. Dragons are the only ones that can do contradictory magic. And I'll explain that as well. Like I said, I'll explain what contradictory magic actually is. In fact, we can use a visual aid for this. Pew. Yeah. Let's resize it. Let's do like 1600. Yeah, cool. Cool. All right. You can gain, so the easiest thing to do is to keep gaining proficiency in a single category, right? And you'll be really powerful. You'll be a really powerful spellcaster. Let's see. Is there anything that's 8-pointed? I guess this will work. We're going to do this. Okay. Get nice and big. Okay. You have 8 points. Let's come here. And we're just going to write them in normal. And let's put them at 18. Okay, so this is like sky. Oh, wow, shit. That's a lot smaller than I thought it was gonna be. 36. Okay. So you have like sky here, ground. I'll move it. Construct. Oh shit. Hang on. I need to associate my guide. Hold on. I might have to fix this. Sky ground's right. Construct is wrong. Shit. Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. We're still on construct, so I can grab it. Whoop. Construct's up here. Okay. Construct. Nature. These are in particular spots. That's why I got worried for a second. Light. You know, it'd be kind of helpful if I could. I should have turned this. I guess we'll turn it here in a second. Light and dark. You have water and fire. And again, these are in particular spots for a reason. Okay, now let me take this whole thing here. Let's get closer to it, like here. I'm gonna take this. We're just gonna whoop like this. All right. Again, I should have thought this thing through more, and I only thought of it now, and I was like, well, fucking, we'll try and fix it. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay. So basically, this is the way it looks, and it's done this way for a particular reason. It's because of also complementary elements, right? What you are next to also is kind of a complement towards it. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad. Like fire is a complement towards nature. Well, it can be for good things like body heat, warmth, things like the stuff that a living creature would need. But it can also be detrimental in that fire can also burn nature. You know, fire burns wood, right? So on and so forth, and stuff like that. This is why these are specifically set up in the particular way that they are. Now, you might have a spell that requires multiple different types. So instead of just one area of magic, you need to do multiple areas of magic. And for our example, for our purposes, let's say we want to create a sword made of fire, right? Well, you can make the fire through, obviously, fire sorceries, fire magics. But now to give it shape, to give it function, to give it purpose, you need to use construct magic. So you would channel fire magic and construct magic at the same time. Now these are not opposed to each other, so let's put in the lines to do opposition to each other. Okay, let's do black. Okay. All right. A little bit off, but you know, it is what it is. Okay. It is what it is. All right. So now you want to channel a fire sword. So again, you channel fire magics to create the flames, the heat, the intensity. Then you can do construct magic to give it shape and purpose. All right. Now you made a fire sword. You can do it the other way too. You can do fire in nature. So with nature, what you would do is you would grow the sword, so to speak. Like you would grow it as a plant or a trunk, and then you would cast it on fire. But still, you need to have multiple spells in order to give the fire shape and purpose in that you want it to be a sword. So that would be the capability to cast 2 magics, right? You made a fire sword. Now, what would be a good example for a 3 magic spell? Because I can't do the one example because that would give stuff away. What would be a good magic for 3 magics? No, Steam requires contradictory. I guess you could, yeah, we could do a magma sword. How about that? So, you would have fire, which is to create the heat and intensity. You use construct to give it shape and purpose, and then you use ground to give it a fuel source to make the molten, like, the lava in and of itself. Right? So that would work. So we'll use a magma sword as an example. So there you go. Now that's called the 3 magic spell. Steam is a contradictory magic. So steam requires you to channel fire and water. These are opposite each other. They are directly opposed to each other. They use the same channel of magic. So they do not want to get along. When fire magic and water magic are being channeled, they equally want to destroy the other. Right? So as what gets put up is, imagine it like you're on a highway. And you have 8 lanes. They're all separated amongst each other. So let's just do like a really quick and dirty highway. Actually 4 lanes. I said 8 lanes, but here we go, 4 lanes. So you have 4 lanes. You can cast 4 different magics. Right? Now, this is only for the purposes of explaining contradictory magics. But you have one magic that wants to go this way. One magic that wants to go this way. So this would be your fire and your water. They both want to use the same lane. Now, in truth, they're not going in opposite directions. It's not like water comes from the left hand, fire comes from the right hand. That's not how magic works. You're literally channeling it through your body. You're not channeling like, well, I bring water from the left hand, fire from the right, and then they meet in the middle. That's not how it works. This is only for the purposes of explaining what contradictory magic would do to each other. So now you have a car in the left lane and another car in that same left lane, but they're going in opposite directions. And when they meet, disaster strikes. And when I say disaster, I mean disaster. Like, if you're not a very skilled mage, channeling magics, just channeling normal magics in general, if you just channel fire magics and you're not very skilled at it, and you try to do something like crazy, well, the magic may ignite your body looking for a fuel source to channel its flames. The whole point behind why you need willpower is you need to have the concentration and will to force the magic to do what you want to do. You're basically taking hold of a raging current. And you are trying to give it a purpose that you specifically want it to have. Now, let's say you want to do steam. Again, dragons, as it turns out in this gets explained as well, only dragons can use contradictory magic. In Lost Frontier, everybody could technically use contradictory magic, it was just difficult. And it is still difficult for dragons to use it as well. Most dragons will not use it because of the risk involved. But if you wanted to make a steam sword, for example, and why you would want to make a steam sword. So you have a fire sword, which is fire and construct magic. That's pretty simple and easy. Your magma sword is fire, construct, and ground magic. That's still pretty simple and easy. In comparison. Now you want to channel a steam sword. Now you need to channel fire and water at the same time and channel construct with it. You have now contradictory magics that are now struggling and fighting for control. However, if you do manage to channel them, you will create steam. So why would you want to make a steam sword as opposed to a fire sword? right? Well, steam doesn't give off light. Fire sword does. While they both give off sound, steam doesn't have the same associated crackling and pitch to it that fire does. So there's a difference there. That one's not better than the other in that regard. Where steam excels is that fire, if you were to say slice somebody with a fire sword, you would cauterize their wound, right? But it'd do some serious damage, but you cauterize the wound and you cause burning around it. If you use a steam sword and you slice somebody, or, God forbid, stab somebody, it's steam. Steam is superheated liquid, right? Liquid that has been heated to a state that it has changed its state of matter into an aerosol form. So what happens when you have a superheated element that is heated to the point of steam that now makes contact with the liquids inside of your body? The liquids inside of your body will rapidly undergo thermal expansion to become steam. And your body being in the way will not matter. So yes, you get an instant explosion. If you, obviously, you wouldn't use a steam sword against like a metal construct or a golem because there's no liquids in there to do this with. But stabbing a steam sword or a steam dagger, or if you're really skilled and can use steam arrows, devastating effects on living creatures. Absolutely devastating. Blows chunks out of them. It's like as if you hit them with a 50 cal. Very devastating. So, steam, a lot of assassins in Lost Frontiers would actually dabble in magic specifically to do fire, water construct, to make steam weaponry, so that they could kill their targets. So if you were an assassin, it would just be great, right? Your target's not recovering when their head explodes. But yeah. So that's the way to do it. And again, this is just a rough thing because I don't want to go too much into it. But this is basically how it works. It's the same thing with like healing magics. How would you do healing magics? Well, when you understand how it's done, you would channel light, nature, and ground together, right? Is there a way to rate a mage's proficiency within just one element, or is it more of a blacksmith type situation where learning to make a good dagger doesn't mean you can make a good spear? Basically, it's a blacksmith situation, right? Like, you can be a really, really good fire mage, but people are only going to really know that if you use your fire magics really well. There's no like, oh, he must be like a level 3 fire wizard. That doesn't exist. Right? That's not the way they look at it. They look at it based on the number of spells you can cast. That associates how much more advanced of a wizard you are. Is I can cast 2 magic spells. I can cast 3 magics. I can cast 4 magic spells. Right? If you cast 4 magic spells, you're really doing something. If you are a dragon, so you're one of the masters, and you're like, I can cast 5 magic spells. Well, now we know you use contradictory magics as well. So, yeah, you're looking pretty fucking good. Well, again, if you wanted to do poison, yeah, I was just talking about why you would do steam weapons. And people use steam weapons because it was flashy. It made a statement, right? Fire a steam arrow into your target's head and their head explodes like a fucking flower. And kind of makes a statement that the target is dead and that they got assassinated. Again, that's if you wanted to be showy, right? But that's what would happen. A lot of people do that. Granted, because mages were so prolific in Lost Frontiers, you then had the opposite, where people started researching counter magics. And counter magics are very effective. Willpower checks against counter magics are tough. So say you wanted to make your fire sword. So you're going to channel fire and construct magic. I want to stop you from channeling your fire sword. So I can channel water and nature, right? I can channel one of these and be like, counter to it. Because now, my magic, I am sending it into you to disrupt your spell. If I disrupt any portion of your spell, if I disrupt your construct, if I disrupt your fire magic, you're going to suffer the backlash from those magics being disrupted. And if you disrupt construct magic, you might get some broken bones, things like that within your body. If you disrupt fire magic, well, the fire might try to erupt out to find a fuel source. So, might start catching all your hairs on fire on your body. Bad things can happen. This is just assuming you're doing, like, small level castings, right? If you're doing high level castings and it gets disrupted and you don't have the willpower to stop it, well, holy shit, you probably just turned yourself into the fucking... well, you probably had the longest, shortest experience of your life. Be very bad. Water and sky would be devastating as cutting tools. Water, in and of itself, people like to do water construct. Can you counterspell? Yeah, you could. This is my own system. So that's why we're explaining this. And we've been explaining bits about the book and locations and stuff in it. Like, so this is my own system. And again, this is why it's set this way. These are the 8... It's supposed to be an 8-pointed star, but we had this as an easier thing. So it's an 8-pointed star. That's what the magic is called. So yeah, if you know what you're doing and you can think outside of the box, you can do a lot of devastating things with it. It's the same reason why healing magics aren't considered inherently good magics. All magic is neutral. Healing, you might be thinking, well, healing magics, that sounds like it's good, right? It's like, does it? Could you imagine the kind of horrific things you could do for torture using healing magics? What if you forcibly regrow somebody's bones incorrectly? Like, what if you forcibly regrow another object into it? What if you fuse that object into their body? Like, there's all kinds of horrific things you can do with something that sounds like it should be good on paper. But yeah, can you counter the counter spell? Yes, but again, that means you're going levels deep to it, right? And if you're going to counter a counter spell, you're obviously going to stop the spell you were casting to try and cast a counter spell to somebody's countering of your original spell. So it gets into that whole thing of like how many layers deep do you want to go? You also have to know somebody's going to counter your spell to begin with, right? You have to be attuned enough to feel that it's happening. So you need to understand, like, if you're channeling fire and construct to make a fire sword, you need to be able to feel that somebody's trying to channel water magic into you, or is trying to channel nature magic into you, right? To get you to disrupt your spell. Now, granted, they also have to be strong enough, they themselves, to not fuck up as well. Oh, you can't have it prepared. Again, magic doesn't work that way unless you do runes and stuff like that, but that's not really, like, you can't prepare a counter spell. You physically have to engage with the target of the spell you're countering. It's not something that can be done passively. You don't have it in your back pocket. You could. And that actually gets used as a point where one mage is fighting another mage, and he's like taunting the other mage. Basically, they're doing verbal sparring back and forth as well, insulting each other and things like that. And then he very loudly, very clearly says, you know, I will destroy you with this fire arrow, right? Before he's actually casting it. He says, I will destroy you with this fire arrow. So he's acting like he's going to cast it. The guy then starts trying to do water and nature to counteract the fire arrow. Then the guy was like, alright, I baited you into it. Now I'm just going to counteract your spell and fuck up your channeling of water magic and nature magic. And instead have you suffer the backlash of a failed spell. Yep. Well, that's the whole thing about magic in my settings is more of a science. It's more of a, you can measure, you can understand how the spells will work. This is how you can create new spells as well, by understanding the basic systems and then putting the building blocks together. Again, only dragons can do contradictory magics and not suffer the consequences. And that gets into a whole thing too of why can dragons do that? That gets into a whole thing all on its own. But again, there is a practical science behind how the magics work. One of the characters actually gets in a fight, and he is a ground mage, and he isn't thinking about it, and he takes to the air to fight an enemy, and one of the other mages realizes, he's like, what the fuck are you... He's like, you're so dumb, you're a ground mage. What ground magics are you going to use up there in the sky, you idiot? So he actually forces his golems to throw rocks and boulders up there in the sky so the guy can actually have anything to cast and channel his magics through. Incorrect, Mishima. The gods can't either. And that gets into a whole thing, too, of the gods use the magic system as well, even though by being gods they have inherent powers that they could use that are not magical. But they use the magic as well. And that gets into the whole thing of like, well, why would you do that? It's the same thing of like, why would you cast a light spell to see if you have a flashlight? Right? It's the same thing with the gods. The gods, it takes longer for them to use their innate abilities when they can just use magic instead. So it's a complacency thing. They get used to the ease of use of magic. So they stop using their inherent innate abilities. Or why would you use a fire spell to light a candle when you have a lighter in your pocket, right? There's no risk whatsoever, you just take the lighter out. Done. Why would you construct a ramp out of ground magic if there's a ladder standing next to you? You know, it's that whole thing of like just pragmatism. Pragmatism will win out in the end. Do you want to spend more time and energy as a divine being, whether that's a good divine being, an evil divine being, or demonic entity? Do you want to spend more of your energies to do something, or do you just want to use the magic system instead? So a lot of them fall into the trap of they'll just use the magic system and they let that capability to manifest their innate abilities, they let it atrophy in themselves. It's still there, but it's just not as practical. They're not used to using it. Because using magic is more fun. Yep. Now, some of them will still stuff like that. Like, they won't need to cast magic to fly or anything like that because they have wings, right? But that becomes more of the... Now, it's flipped the other way. Because they have wings already, why would they need to cast a fly magic? Oh yeah, there's some mages that they want to do it the hard way because they feel more accomplished by doing it the hard way. It's why Meraxus is the way he is, why he did everything the way he did, why he treats like things the way he does is. He believes that having the struggle in and of itself is inherently valuable. It's why when Lost Frontiers was a game and he was playing it, none of the Dracoran players would help any other Dracoran players. And again, for anyone that doesn't remember, Dracoran is dragon. So none of the dragon players would help any other dragons. If you started as a dragon player, you were on your own. Nobody else was helping you. And everyone was like, why? Why wouldn't you help that? If you knew how terrible the struggle was to get to the top, why wouldn't you help? It's because once you got to the top, that level of appreciation you had for the struggle you went through is what made it all worth it. Right? You don't have that appreciation if you can start at the very top. If you can be like, well, I'm going to start at level 50, which is the level cap. I'm going to start at level 50. Well, you don't appreciate what it was like going from level 1 up to level 50. Right? You don't have that same appreciation that somebody that put in the time and work to get there the long way does. A question: if the gods actually studied their innate more in depth, would they be able to reduce the time needed? Yes and no. You can reduce it to a certain point, right? You can't do it like instantaneously. Magic will be faster in a lot of regards. The exception being, obviously, if you want to fly and you are a god that has wings. Well, why would you bother wasting your time to cast magic at all, even though it's only going to take a short time? Like, let's say it takes 2 seconds to cast a spell to fly. When you have wings, you can just fly. Just jump and fly. You can just go. Right off the bat. No wait whatsoever. Just go. Do it. So those are situations where it becomes the inverse. For most of the time, magic will always be faster than the innate abilities they have. And that's why they fall into the trap of relying so much on it. But yeah, This really did just become, like, let's talk about the settings and stuff. That's really what this stream became. I'm all for it. Hopefully you guys found it interesting. We've definitely had a lot of conversations in the chat and everything, so I've been appreciating that. Yeah, by the way, this is the system I use for all my settings. All of them. Because, remember, all of my settings are inherently tied into Severus. Severus is the one that creates everything. And then he dictates the rules of each different universe. But they all have a base foundation. And this is basically the base foundation. If your world has magic, it will function off of this system. If your world doesn't have magic, well, he wanted to see what would happen if your world didn't have magic. It's just, sorry, you got the shitty hand. Well, there is a god who had wings, who suddenly no longer has the capability to have wings, who might have appreciated that, but they were currently in the process of being horribly murdered. Well, not even murdered, because that implies that it wasn't justly fucking deserved. Yeah, exactly. That gets into the whole thing, too, where a lot of things, there's this yin and yang between magic and technology. Because why would you need to make robots if you can make golems? Right? If you have magic that makes golems, why would you make robots? Why would you need to make cars if you have the capability to create autonomous stagecoaches and things like that? What purpose would a car serve at that point? Right? Now, there are some things that will develop technology-wise even with magic. Things like gunpowder. Things like explosives. Things like that will still develop. Because that is the people, the lay people that are not capable of using magic, trying to assert more power for themselves. But again, that's where technology has shifted. That's why it's the yin and yang. Technology has now shifted a different course because other things are not being developed. Again, healing magics exist. Why would you have doctors and hospitals and things like that? Other than, obviously, a hospital to keep people there while the mages go around and do their work. That can function. That's what some of it does, Mishima. That's what some of the mages do. Not in this setting. This setting in particular is not going to get to more modern times. It's not even going to get to like revolutionary times. It's going to stay probably at most getting near Renaissance. And again, Renaissance in and of itself wasn't an actual specific thing. It's just kind of a general feel and vibe. But yeah. Um, but the same thing for a lot of stuff like that. It's just like, I've wondered if there is a technology system that functions kind of like electricity, but also has its own unique function that can be activated. Yeah. Oh, logistics are incredibly important. I always find that more interesting, how the logistics of things affect other things. Remember what I always said for people, for if they ever wanted to write a story, and again, I know it sounds pretentious, right? I know if you want to create a whole new world from the ground up, let's say it's a fantasy setting, or even just a medieval setting. You don't want any magic whatsoever, but you want something kind of quirky and off. Think about it from the perspective of the local blacksmith. What is the daily life of a local blacksmith in your setting? And I know how that sounds, but my whole point behind it is, what is the day-to-day life of the normal peasantry in a world where this particular thing you want to exists now? How does that affect them? How does this affect the local economy? How does this affect the priests and healers and nuns? How does it affect the alchemists, if they exist? How does it affect the blacksmith, the carpenters, the coopers, the tailors? You know, how does all this affect these things? What ends up happening, Sakara is an example where technology will actually start developing because magic starts to wane. When the magic starts to go away and things, and I'm not going to explain why the magic starts to go away, but when the magic starts to go away, technology obviously has to pick up the slack. So that's a setting where you'll have magic and technology will be there. And oh boy, when the magic gets turned back on. When the magic comes back, baby, disaster. That gets into a whole other disaster. Because now you have really high advanced technology, and then you get really high advanced magic back. And then the fucking chaos that erupts from that. But another aspect that a lot of development happened with was a lot of people would become a profession known as mage killers in Lost Frontiers. So a mage killer, essentially, you would designate yourself as you would only cast counter spells, and you would have gear specifically designed to work against magic. So stuff that'd be resistant to different magics. Let's meld them and overthrow the overgod Severus. LOL. Yeah, that's not happening. Severus is one of those things where I always feel like, I know a lot of people disagree. They're like, no, there shouldn't be anything that the people can't conquer. No, there should be something. Trust me, you're going to need to keep your players in check. You need to keep them in check somehow. They can't just always get away with everything, right? There needs to be some final thing that's just like, no, stop it. Just fucking stop it. Oh, but, I have this, and this capabilities, and he has that, and that, and if we put them together, we can absolutely kill the king, and no one will be any of the wiser, and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, sure, I'll let stuff like that slide. But they're like, yeah, and now we're going to destroy all the gods and create Ragnarok on here, and so on. And then I just be like, you then realize that there is an old man staring at you, and he's been shaking his head, and you realize, give him a couple rolls and be like, you need to cease what you are doing because you are spoiling his fun. Again, Severus likes to observe things. If you decide to go on a Ragnarok and he does not personally approve of the Ragnarok, your shit is getting kicked in real fast. Remember, too, Severus also has a trigger point thing. My god. Imagine, that would be so funny if a tabletop player was like, I'm going to contact Severus. Okay, how do you know Severus exists? first off. Because that's the other thing, too. Severus doesn't like people knowing he exists. No, I'm just using that as a generic example, Sir Reginald. Like, you know, the players themselves wanting to kill all the gods and bring down the heavens and, you know, cause the apocalypse sort of thing. Like, there is an ultimate measure of there is the safety net of Severus existing, who can just come in and be like, no, bad, just stop it. I'm having my fun here. You're not taking it away from me. Ugh. Yeah, the one thing Severus doesn't like people knowing, like, he's indifferent in it, but he doesn't want people to know. But if people figure it out on their own, he's just kind of like, you know, whatever. Like, good for you. You figured it out. But he is absolutely the like, it was one character manages to figure out that Severus is a god to begin with. He doesn't realize his name or anything like that, but he realizes the man he's talking to is a god, which then makes him go like, you know, well, how'd you figure that out and stuff like that? Well, what makes you think that, and so on and so forth. And they go through the little conversation, but he doesn't know the name of him. He doesn't know anything about him. But then he's like, but you're not like any god that I know existing. And then that could spiral into a whole thing from there. But he does enjoy just observing things. That's one of his truest joys. That's why he allows all these things to happen. Because remember, in the beginning of everything, in my setting, obviously, beginning of everything, there was just the Dragon of the Void, Severus. He's the only one that existed. He's the only thing that existed. He doesn't even remember why he came into being, right? He was just there in existence. There was nothing else. But then life kept springing up from him. And there would be like a universe would spring off of him. And he would crush it, something like that, because it's disturbing his tranquility. He would destroy it, destroy that one, destroy that one, destroy that one. And one day he just gets curious. He's like, alright, well, what happens if I let this go on for a little bit? And so he does. And then he starts observing it, and he runs into a god, or technically a goddess, who is a goddess of song and merriment. And he hears singing for the first time. And this is what basically changes his perspective on it. And he starts becoming obsessed with the idea of song and music and singing and what these things could create. So he starts intentionally creating new universes and allowing more universes to spontaneously exist, and he observes them all so that he can find more things that might interest him. And yeah, that's it's kind of, again, I'm paraphrasing it down quite a lot, but that's basically how it all starts. And again, all these universes, they don't know to, like, basically look up. The gods of these universes don't know to look up in the night sky and see that there's a giant fucking thing looking down way above them. Looking at them the way that, you know, we might look at, like, amoeba. Like, oh, fascinating. No, Mishima, that is actually a thing that happens. So, some of the gods, some of the people turn into deities themselves, right? If you can. If there are certain things that do it. Oh, trust me, a lot of gods can't handle the fact that there's something way above them either. But, let's say that you are in a universe that even allows the lessers, the commons, to become deities to begin with. So you've now ascended up a tier. And then you realize there's a tier above. Well, first off, the fact that you can handle that there's something way above the gods in and of themselves, already, you know, you're doing real good if you can handle that well. And then you decide that you're going to go out there and see. You can actually go out from your universe and go into the void itself, where Severus is, and then go and check out all the other universes around as well. Yes, he does. You do remember well, Gurinus. Yes. He has, like, there are multiple areas within Severus's domain, because he's basically turned the void and stuff into kind of like, oh boy. Alright, so this is going to get kind of creepy, but the gods that manage to ascend beyond their universe to then come out and about, kind of like Cordysoth does. The ones that manages to actually go into Severus's world, they go into a realm that is the void in of itself, but it has things like the Great Hall and everything like that. And it is just an area that looks like marbles, basically, and they're all different universes all over the place. But this is just kind of like a perception that people have, because really what you're doing is you're standing on like a tiny portion of Severus himself out in the void. And yeah, so then when some of the gods realize that they're out here and now they're above everything, and then they realize that even still they are a tiny little speck on a different god right now. Like, yeah, a lot of them can't handle that either. But of his domain, you have like the Hall of Universes, so basically it looks like a bunch of marbles that are on stands and everything like that all over the place. And Severus himself has what is known as the Choir of the Void. For when he finds people of exceptional musical skill, because music was the first thing that got him interested in even allowing life to exist, right? When he... hang on a second. Does Severus sever things in two? Kind of. I mean, it's kind of what led to his name being Severus, because he literally severs and extinguishes life, like, on a universal scale. So, kind of why he got the name that he did. But anyways, so he has the Choir of the Void, and in it, like, the Choir of the Void is existing within massive, like, grand opera halls and, like, these big dance halls and banquets and things like that. So the Grand Opera is where the Choir of the Void is, and that's where he'll take any existing being from any of the universes that hits a certain level, he will bring into the Void Choir. And he himself, even in all of his avatar states and forms, and all the different universes that he's in, because that he's observing, he will actually be listening to the music and things like that. Music and auditory things also play a big theme in it. A lot of the gods will actually use that for various purposes. Like Cordysoth uses it to keep himself calm. Cordysoth has a really, really nasty, wrathful side. And he uses music and different levels of, like, singing and, not poetry, what is it? Singing and lyrics, there's got to be a better term for it, to keep his wrathful side calm. And try to keep himself centered, because if he lets his wrathful side go, he gets incredibly spiteful and vicious and petty and does horrific things. There are many a world that have got to experience Cordysoth when he is fully, colloquially we'll just say off his meds. But to be fair, they also, like, in his mind, they deserved it. Like, that's when he chooses to allow himself to be like, fuck it, y'all deserve this. Anyways, let's see. Yeah, the Choir of the Void. The other thing, too, to remember, none of the gods are omnipotent, and none of them are omniscient. Even Severus is not omnipotent or omniscient. He's just that much stronger at the moment than everyone else. Now, personally, I don't plan anything ever coming to rival Severus. He is the pinnacle, basically. But he doesn't know everything that's going on at all times. It's why he has beings and avatars of himself that are in all the universes, so he can try to experience things. Because he doesn't just know the things. He just can't pick up the universe and see it and just be like, oh, yes, I see everything. I know everything. Wow, Timmy, you're a piece of shit. Or, well, you will be in 3 days, but, you know. He doesn't do anything like that, no. He is still just as limited in terms of how he collects information. He just has the capability to collect information at a faster rate than other people. And same thing with that, which is also why the big trigger for him is asking Severus to give you all knowledge. No. Severus is the Void Dragon. It's why dragons exist to begin with. He is the pinnacle of everything. He is where all the universes and all life comes from. And he himself is a dragon. It's how they always seem to infect and inundate into all universes, no matter what. Because they're all coming from the same central core. Even universes where dragons don't exist, in that cosmological sense, you'll still get stories and tales, and there'll be mental ideas of dragons existing. Yeah. Now, he also is interested in the concept, like Cortisoth, for example, petitions him to, like, hey, I want to kind of futz around in one of your universes. So what I want to do is I want to go to a universe that doesn't have magic, and I want to take a person from that universe and put it in a universe that does have magic. And he got stopped to self-hate. No, he doesn't hate himself at all. Again, he doesn't experience the concept. It's a whole thing of, like, he doesn't understand the concepts of, like, love and hate and things like that. You know, he's just like, what? Severus physically cannot comprehend he can understand the idea behind it, but he can't, like, experience it or feel it or anything like that. No, we talked about it before, Grinds. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was right before you got here. We talked about it before, but it's like, if you ask Severus for all knowledge, you want to know everything, he will specifically find the knowledge, you in particular, like, just based off of what he can understand about you, he will try to find some knowledge that you do not want, and he will force you to experience it all rapidly, very quickly at once. Like, basically what would happen if you were to get eaten, things like that, and you get to go in gruesome detail and experience it in your mind and things like that. Essentially, he's trying to destroy your very capability to think at that point. You really, really don't want to do it. Reginald, you're attributing three-dimensional concepts to a fifth-dimensional being, lol. Yeah, kinda. I guess that's kind of a way to look at it. Yeah, he's capable of understanding what the feeling is, but he can't, like, grapple with it, right? Because he can't experience love or hate or things like that. Like, there's just stuff he can't experience, and a lot of it, Cortisoth actually postulates that the reason he can't understand that is because he's never been small and weak. Severus has always been the pinnacle, always. So he's never experienced what it's like to be the little guy, to be the small thing, to be the amoeba that he's observing. Monkey paw of a wish there. I mean, if you survive, congrats, you probably consent. Oh no, he will ensure that you do not get out of that with an intact mind or capability to rationalize anymore. Yeah, that's Cortisoth's reasoning for why he thinks that Severus can't experience those things, is because he's never been weak, he's never been fragile, he's never been the small thing. And same thing that Meraxus comes as a conclusion to in about dragons in his area of domain. Is they've never been the small and weak thing. It's probably why Meraxis is so much more capable of understanding what the Drakine, kobolds, what the Drakine are doing, and he can like associate with them more. Is because he was a human. He was a human before. He knows what it's like to not have magic, to be powerless, to be someone who works through labors himself. Oh no, the capability to ascend requires a certain level of sanity in order to even like comprehend how to ascend. Like you need to be functional in order to actually ascend. Because there is an actual methodology, well, in the universes that allow that movement. Because some universes just don't. But there are some universes that do. Cortisoth happened to come from a universe that did. And he goes through the process and he understands how to properly ascend. And remember, Cortisoth is also, as he finds out, and he's thankful for, is that he and Severus are basically the only immortal beings in existence. And there's a reason why Cortisoth becomes immortal. There is an actual mechanical reason of what happens. And it's also why, once he figures out that mechanical reason, he very, very quickly makes sure that it cannot happen ever again. Because remember, that's Cortisoth's big trigger for it is people wanting immortality. Yes, there is the capability to be a mad god. You can't be mad and then ascend, but you could be a being that has already ascended, and then you realize something horrible and go mad. Like, again, there are some gods that cannot handle the fact that, you know, hey, I'm a god, I'm above this world, and so on and so forth, and then they look up and they see Severus looking down at them as if through a microscope. There are some gods that can't handle that. But that's also why Severus it doesn't try to present himself that often. Like, it's a miracle that Cortisoth was able to keep his sanity when he realizes just how deep everything goes with Severus. Yeah, it's that whole joke in Space Station 13 of, guys, there is no ceiling. And then everybody on the space station does /me, looks up. Guys, they don't want you to know this. They don't want you to know. There's no ceiling on the station. There's no ceiling. Ah! And then everybody /me looks up. Oh, God. That has led to so many fun moments, though, in that game. Oh, my God. If the admins play into it, and everybody starts going mad and crazy because there's no ceiling and stuff like that, and then, like, the admins can play into the, like, reality disassociation in progress. Sending out Delta kill teams to stop the madness from spreading. Yeah, okay, well, I don't know about you guys, but I actually had fun just sitting here chilling with you guys, talking and everything. Oh, Wolfie! Fucking great timing. Great timing. We were just going through, like, the book and everything like that I'm writing and stuff like that, and all the, like, how my universes work and all that stuff, and how the magic system works and everything. We've basically finished. Yeah, good timing. Very good timing. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I had a good old time. Cover looks like House of Leaves. Which cover? Oh, I don't have a cover yet. Not yet. But this right here, this is a Star Fort and stuff like that. So if that was confusing, I guess let's look what House of Leaves looks like. Hold on. House of Leaves. interesting cover. I actually kind of like that. Looks like it's a Fibonacci sequence around it. Here, let me open the image in the new tab. See? It's a Fibonacci sequence. That's pretty fucking neat. I like it. I like it, I like it, I like it. Yeah, I know. But yeah, this is just how the magic system works. These are you have the 4 systems of magic, then the 4 contradictories. So that's what this is. It's supposed to be an 8-pointed star. This one, just obviously for ease of use, because of Paint.net not having an 8-pointed star, has a 7-point. So close. But it doesn't have an 8-pointed star, so yeah, that's why I use that. You're so close. Oh my goodness sakes. Whew, yeah. Anyways, chat, I'm going to do my wrap-up here. I'm going to then go get some lunch because I'm very hungry. Again, we're still in the process of trying to fix our sleep schedule. So, I'm just going to, I don't know, do stuff to make sure I don't take a nap. I just need to make sure I do not take a nap. Yeah, we'll do our wrap-ups. And I want to say thank you all so much for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. Hope you guys take care. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe and healthy. Get fit, get ripped. And I will see you on Saturday Showtime. There is a stag this Sunday as well. And remember, next Friday is the movie marathon. We will not be streaming next Friday. Instead, we will be doing the 5-movie marathon. So the 5-film Friday. That will be on the Discord. If you want to watch all 5 of them, you can absolutely do that. But we're going to be watching Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, then Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, then Dragonheart Vengeance, then The Gentleman, then Godzilla -1. And the only criteria for these 5 films, is the fact that they will be all good films. So all 5 of those are very good films. Highly recommend all of them. But if there's a particular one you want, feel free to tune in for it. I have the timings in the Discord already. I will do one more ping on Thursday to let people know, because obviously I'm not going to ping, do the everyone ping for that between each movie. Good lord, that'd be terrible. But then we're going to go to the theater attendee pings for each individual movie. Yeah, and if you want to show up for all of them, feel free. That's what it's there for. But yeah. Also, as Wolfie said, tell them about tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will be doing Saturday Showtime as well. And then after Saturday Showtime, I don't know when exactly that we're going to do it. But I know there was a put-in for doing Team Fortress 2. Potentially, I think Kreese said he was also looking at West Hunt as well. Yeah. So that should be interesting. Yeah, so that will be with Wolfie as well, so that should be fun. Anyways, chat, for now, hopefully you guys take care, and bye-bye. Goodbye. Oh, bye-bye.